made that up. His mistress made that up way later. He never said
made
that.
it up.
She made it up. She's the only one who's ever said that he said that. The quote is, it's between him and her on a yacht in the Mediterranean. He says, "Oh, why do people think I'm copying Hitler? I've been a racist since 1923." No, he never said that.
So why would she make it up?
Because she was a racist.
Because people think he was copying Hitler. So. Well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you can send me something on like proving that she made it up, like
go and look in main VC. There's a quote list that we made.
There's also a lot of other quotes of like Mussolini saying racist
Not
things.
really. Yeah, no, I mean in main VC, the same place you sent the doctrine of race thing.
Oh, okay.
Like even in the doctrine of fascism, in the doctrine of fascism, it states not a race nor geographically defined region. Okay, you know that one. And then you have talks with email Ludwig where he says national pride is no need for the delirium of race. You have Minister of the Corporations, Renato Ricci, quote, "One of the points we must commit ourselves against is the fight against racism. Since in the universal fascism of fascism, the faithful Askar was equal to us, he is our brother, and an imperial vision of racial discrimination is not conceivable." You have
I know all these quotes. I know all these quotes.
Yeah. Right? You have all of these quotes, varied quotes going all the way down. No. Mussolini would shift himself on the position of race when it became political expedient to do so. And then he never implemented any real laws to enforce the racial manifesto, which came to a huge argument with National Socialists. You have to open the fucking thing in browser, retard. Anyway, not you. Not another troll.
No, I know.
What is
this
guy
like yeah, no, he would.
This guy like a Seamus site or something?
Troll?
No, this is Seamus.
Oh,
I
thought he was in Ukraine or something.
I am.
Oh, have you not? Okay, okay. I don't know.
We have internet, you know.
That you're alive. I'm surprised you're alive.
Why?
Because like you guys are all dying.
Not really.
All right. Well, anyways, that's besides the point.
But no, Mussolini's swap was entirely political in order to justify an alliance with the Third Reich. And it was widely denounced by the rest of the Fascist Party.
I have quotes of him like explicitly saying things which are like racial or racialist. Like
what?
Like he said, like fascism was born out of a perennial need of our Aryan race. He said that in 1921.
No, he didn't.
That one's stable.
That quote isn't real?
No. If the speech, there's no mention of race at all. In the speech, there's no mention.
Yeah, if you go and get the book, the actual book, Speeches of Mussolini. If you go get the book, Speeches of Mussolini, 1918 to 1943, it covers that speech, and there's no mention of Aryanism at all in that speech in the book. But it's in original Italian, so there's that. But no, Biblioteca Fascista, which is the one who starts that, is they mess things around a lot, and they change things around a lot.
Okay.
They can be a good source from time to time, but a lot of the stuff they do there is they shift it around and they twist it to push a far more racialized view. Like, he did say some racist things, which is not unbelievable. He lived in the 1920s and 30s, but he was far more progressive than any of his contemporaries when it came to race. And people under him, like Renato Ricci, were explicitly anti-racist. So, and you don't become minister of the corporations if you're not popular, right? You don't take one of the most important positions in the regime, offhandedly.
Yeah, so my view of Italian fascism was that like the state was there to kind of like mold the Italian race to the existence. Like it was a continuation of Mazzini, really, the unification of Italy.
I mean, some people would say it's a continuation of Mazzini, but it's really not. Fascism as an ideology didn't even come from Italy. It came from France, across the Alps into Italy.
Yes, Circle Proudhon.
It was picked up by the more than that.
I have another quote from 1920 speech. Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
Okay. He says, quote, "Well, we fascisti want to bring into every city, into every part of the country, even the most remote, the pride and passion of belonging to the most noble Italian race, the race which has produced Dante, which has given Galileo, the great masterpieces of art."
Yeah. It's important to note that back then, the use of the word race is threefold, right? One, it can refer to a biological sense. Two, it can refer to cultures, which would now be known as nationalities. And three, it can refer to anthropological terms, right? Caucasoid, Negroid, etc., right? Mongoloid, all those anthropological. Anyways,
right? Those are the. So funny.
those are the three categories of which race would be used in. For example, if we look at James Connolly, who was a socialist and not a racist, right, extensively used the term Irish race to define the Irish people, right? He was explicitly only referring to them as a cultural group, very obviously so, right? But he uses the word race. That's because in the 1910s and before that even, but all the way up until the 1950s, using the word race to refer to a nationality was a very common thing. So when he says the Italian race, he's not talking about a biological people. He's talking about the nationality, the culture, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would agree with that. And like my view of race is that like biology
For
is
example,
really only
he
one part.
clarifies that in 1934, where he talks about anthropological sciences. He says a few days ago or so, the famous anthropologist Sir Grafton Elliott Smith, speaking to a Congress of European scientists, did not scruple to declare that Nazi doctrines of a pure race or Aryan, if you will, falls in flagrant conflict with recognized teachings of anthropological science. Science, therefore, does not guarantee the purity of anyone's blood. But which race? Does there exist a race, a German race? Has it ever existed? Will it ever exist? Reality, myth, or is it a hoax of the theorists? Right. So right there, he calls into the question the anthropological idea of race as well.
Yeah, he rejected the idea of like pure races existing, and
Well,
even
he
the
rejected
Nazis
the
did to
idea
some extent.
widely.
Well,
No,
the
the Nazis
Nazis
didn't.
did more.
Have you
'Cause
ever read?
this dude, like,
Have you ever
fucking
read
told
any?
people.
You ever read any of the Nazi books? Like, for example, something from Himmler or from Alfred Rosenberg.
Oh,
They are
hold on.
very clear that race is real.
I should rephrase. Not all of them did, but they had the view that race wasn't just like this super fixed category. Like races were always changing.
No,
like
they did.
like even
No,
the
they
German
didn't.
race, it was a mixture of like
Rosenberg.
a lot of different tribes.
No. Hitler states very clearly in Mein Kampf that the German race doesn't change, and that races don't change, and that because of that, the Germans need more space. It's this whole excusation for the Lebensraum idea is that the German race has been slowed and stagnant because it's stuck in a small area and it needs to expand. It's always been slow and stagnant. It's always needed to expand. That's why they attacked the Roman Empire. That's why they expanded into Gaul. That's why they expanded east. So no, the Nazis didn't believe that race was something that shifted and changed all the time. They were very clear. In fact, Hitler tried tracing the racial origins back to fucking, I don't know, aliens and shit. Or Himmler did for Hitler. Like there's one quotation, I don't have the exact word for word of, where Hitler is fucking sitting there shaking his head as Himmler like pulls up mud huts and anthropological digs or archaeological digs, right? He's like, look, I found the ancient Germans and it's fucking mud huts in northern Germany. And Hitler's there fucking shaking his head going, why the fuck are we digging this up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they
when
went on to try to discover the origin of the Aryans. Like they looked at like
Exactly.
India and
They always
whatnot.
believed Tibet, but they always believed that
Or Tibet, yeah.
Aryans were a thing, right? They were a set thing and that couldn't change. That's why they executed inferior races. They thought that they could breed out some of the non-Aryan, like for the Czechs, right? They said that you're like 75% Aryan if you're a Czech, so you could breed out the mongrel in you, which is why they didn't kill all of the Czechs, just most of them.
Yeah, they kind of view
Maggot.
Slavs as like contaminated Aryans, like if you want to use that phrase.
They didn't view them as Aryans at all, unless there were certain Slavs that had mixed with Aryans, like the Polish people who lived on the mountains and the Czechs, the Bohemians, right? Or like the Slovenians and Croats. They would like give them the designation of partial Aryans, and then they would say that you could breed the Slav out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, Maggot, Orel, do you consider National Socialism part of fascism?
See, I'm actually not like completely sure because like on the one hand, like you can argue they didn't really have a corporate state.
They
But
didn't have
I
one
would
at all.
I would say they're like close to fascism, but maybe not
In what way?
explicitly fascist.
In what way are they close to fascism?
Well, like the DAF, German Labor Front, like that was
You
was
mean
semi
the famous?
Seamus,
That
Seamus,
was
let me handle this one. Seamus, please, I'm begging you. No, that they were in no way comparable to the Italian labor unions. Collective bargaining within the German labor front was completely banned. You could not.
Yeah, it was a
do
rubber stamp. No,
Whereas-
I agree.
Right. It
Well,
was
yeah,
not
like- it was like
Robert
auto-
the
Lay.
only
autocratic,
difference was
yeah.
that they organized the entire economy under like capitalist interests, and that was it. There was no like broader representation of the people by the people, or even with the interests of the working class in mind at all.
Like
It's in no
Robert
way
Lay
comparable.
famously said Now we have restored power to the people who should be holding power in the factories. The employer, like the king of his own castle, he will now rule over those who work under him. That is a quote from Robert Ley, the guy who ran the DAF.
Yeah.
They shared nothing in common with the union system of fascist Italy. One, because it was one. It was a humongous single entity that was top-down ruled, right? In fascist Italy, the union was democratically run, one. Two, it was decentralized. And three, it was didn't come into one big union with a top-down rule. It came into like a confederation, as it was called. There's a good book
I
in
understand there was
Era
actually
by
collective
by a
bargaining. Yeah.
Russian guy. There was a book, and it's called National Socialism versus Fascism. And he goes into detail on this. He explains that the Volkenheimschaft isn't any sort of corporatism or anything. It was like a cultural mission to try and like force German people to accept that the employer is superior to them. Additionally, the Nazis were famously crony capitalists. They sold literally everything they had in the state to private interest, including the banks, Deutsche Bank, Schwab Bank, etc., were all sold to private interest immediately upon the assumption of power in Nazi Germany. They also sold the roads, the water systems.
The banks were handed over to control of, like, party members. So I mean, it's not really
it's crony
privatization.
capitalism. No, it is privatism.
China does
It's called
the same thing.
cronyism.
China does
Yes,
the
it
same
does.
thing.
Well, not entirely. China still has some state control of things. China is what's called state capitalism, and Mussolini directly denounces the idea of state capitalism in a speech to the corporations, 1933, in which he states that now I have the power to become a state capitalist, or on this other side of the story, a state socialist, but I will not do this. Right? Da 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 da. So no, like even China is not comparable to fascist Italy. Additionally, it doesn't
But
really have any kind of corporate system.
China does. Okay, so you don't believe they have corporatism?
They don't.
Okay.
They don't have Gentilian corporatism. They may have some other form, like Salazar was a corporatist, right? So there's like other forms of corporatism one can adopt. Plato had corporatism. That's where it comes from originally, right? It's Plato.
Yeah, even
like,
even Hegel did.
Yeah, right. Everybody has a form of corporatism. Like the Catholic Church had its own form of corporatism, but like Gentilian or fascist corporatism or national syndicalism is very different from what you see in China and very different from what you saw in Nazi Germany.
Isn't China, they're able to elect, like, workers are able to elect representatives, like, parliaments, right?
Not really, no.
Okay. Well, I think there is a system
in
in place.
Not really. There's something akin to that, but it's not that. And I'm pro China.
No, I like China too. I mean, I think I would consider them like third position, if not like fascist.
That's not a real thing. Third position isn't a real thing. It was invented by Perón because he didn't want to use the word fascist. Third position isn't real.
So it's just like everything's fascism. Like,
no, there's other ideologies, right? It's not just fascism. There's corporatism, like you saw in Salazar's regime. There's Caesarism, like you saw with Franco. There's Christian corporatism. There's Soldarism, which is not to be confused with the Soldarism that's seen in Russia, which is fascism under a different name. But the Soldarism of what's his face? He's a French yellow socialist, right? Now, there's a whole array of different fucking ideologies that have like similar tones, I guess you could say, to them, to what you would see in fascism. It's not like a unique idea to organize a nation like that, but like the important things are philosophy and economics, right? That's what really influences a system and an ideology, rather than just how you organize a state.
yeah, I mean, I would say you could group maybe like fascism, National Bolshevism, like Strasserism, Bronism, etc. Like you could probably say like these are forms of like anti-Marxist, like nationalistic socialism, which I would consider third position.
Anti-Marx. Fascism isn't anti-Marx.
Okay, post-Marxist.
Neither is neither. Yeah, you can say post-Marxist, but neither is Strasser. National Bolshevism is by its nature, but like Strasserism also isn't very similar to fascism at all. It's like guild socialism, which is older.
I'll say non-Marxist forms of socialism. Anti-Marxist.
Well, no, that's even wider. Just say like alternative Marxism, right? Because a lot of these ideas consider themselves extensions of Marxism, not Strasser, but like National Bolsheviks, fascism. They see themselves in like the continuation of Marxist ideas, right? Strasser reaches more back to like, yeah, like, yeah, Marxist revisionism also works as a name, I guess, or heresy or whatever, right? But like Strasser was more, he wasn't his socialism isn't Marxian. You can call him a non-Marxian socialist because it wasn't. It was like German guild socialism and soldier socialism, not to be confused with trench socialism, but like barrack socialism that you'd see in like Bismarckian Germany, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Which is why you get people like Ernst Jünger calling himself a socialist, paradoxically, right? Because he wasn't a Marxist by any means, but he was like a Bismarckian socialist.
Yeah, well, I mean, socialism predates Marx. You know?
I mean, Bismarckism doesn't, but like, yeah,
I feel like a
also
lot
like
of people don't even know
utopianism.
that.
Utopianism, you have Edwardianism, you have Thomasism, you have a bunch of different socialisms that predate Marx by a long ways, and even some in Germany and Britain where Engels and Marx came from. The difference is that they weren't as like philosophically like composed. They were much more systematic, right?
Sure.
Like utopian socialism wanted slavery.
Yeah, it's some utopia, right?
Utopia for the ones on the top.
Have you ever heard of George Fitzhugh?
I might have.
Okay, so he was actually he was a Confederate socialist thinker in like the antebellum period, right? In the United States, and he literally said that like slavery was like the best form of socialism.
Well, yeah, that comes from a utopian basis. A bunch of Dutch people in the 1600s went, how do we build a utopia? Like a society that will last forever and will always be good. Well, we enslave a bunch of people to do all the shitty work, and then everybody else gets to live pretty good lives.
Yeah, I think he might have been influenced by them.
Well, he probably was deeply influenced by them because their ideal society was like a slaveocracy kind of thing.
In that specific way, Marxism-Leninism creates the perfect utopian socialism.
So true.
Where there's not slavery?
No. In which
Where?
I said the perfect utopian socialism.
Oh, where everybody's slaves. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You must imagine that Sisyphus is happy.
It was actually Fitzhugh was actually like a universal slavery advocate. So like he won like non-racial.
Yeah.
Slavery.
I know a guy in the modern day that's a universal slavery advocate.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Who?
A guy named Bones. Slavery advocate Bones. He used to have a website. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, we kind of already have like slavery in the U.S. Like even the 13th Amendment says.
No. He means like chattel slavery.
I mean, I wouldn't mind with like enslaving like pedos, or like hardcore like threats to society.
He means society-wide fucking chattel slavery, because he believes that it gives virtue to slaves and prevents laziness and whatnot in the population.
Yeah, Christianizes, civilizes them. Yeah.
Well, it's not about civilization even, and he doesn't distinguish it to any singular race, right? Which is interesting. No, he feels that having slavery will like force societal degeneration to stop, because you're forcing people to work and participate in society at large.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
he is a racist.
Are you pro Vosh?
Pro Vosh? I don't mind Vosh. Vosh is he claims to be an anarcho-syndicalist, but I don't believe him. So as long as he claims to be an anarcho-syndicalist,
I don't even think he claims that anymore.
Whatever.
Oh
yeah, he's still does, right? I know he's not an anarchist, and he's probably not a syndicalist either. But as long as he says he is, yeah.
I think he's basically just like a Democrat.
No, he's a Fox socialist, like all of them are, right? They're all like champagne socialists.
Yeah, but I said yesterday
for which I'll never forgive them. For which I'll never forgive them. They're all champagne socialists and whatnot. But since he's quirky and weird, he calls himself a syndicalist, so it attracts people to the ideas of syndicalism. Then you get domino effects.
Alternative and cool, bro.
It's a different name, guys. Definitely doesn't mean anything different.
But Jay, you know the clips I'm talking about, like about Vosh, right?
Yeah, no, they're very.
They don't look good. Yeah.
Well,
like he said that like
never looked good. Like there's an edit of him like talking about horse talk.
Like, okay.
No, the context of that conversation was he was saying that He was saying that under the person's worldview who he was talking to, because he was talking with somebody who had this like really weird moral framework, and he was saying like, so why is child porn bad? And then the guy like couldn't really give him a good answer, so he was like, I haven't heard a single good argument yet as to why child porn should be illegal. Like in the context of him talking to that guy, within the context of that guy's moral framework, which was
Vosh out of context can be a pretty funny thing to watch. Okay, they can get him
so
good
that was
with the
taken out of
clips.
context.
Yeah, they do a lot of the context, but what isn't what
we might in the future. We might in the future.
What isn't out of context is Vosh talking about horse cocks a lot.
True.
He is definitely a weird.
There also was like something I saw him say in Discord. I don't know if you could say this is out of context, but someone said that like they had sex with an adult as a child, and then he was like, "Oh, yo, bro, that's so hot." So like that's like pushing it way too far.
Questionable activities.
Like,
for
you can't make excuses for that.
Yeah, it's a bad joke. He's autistic.
I'm not gonna die on a hill over Vosh, honestly.
Oh, do we have a Muslim in here?
Oh no, I just fuck around as the troll.
Oh, okay. I was about to tear you to pieces.
Gotta call on me, fucking PFP.
No, that's actually funny.
It's mainly
the
just
Ummah has fallen.
Shia guy, I know. It's mainly just the fuck with the Shia guy, I know.
Fair, that's good.
He really hates Iran and he really hates Shias. So I said
Same.
I was converting to Shia Islam and I'd eaten a donkey and I was repenting of my sins to Ali. I was praying to Ali and shit.
To Ali.
Yeah, Ali.
Yeah, bro, we gotta
Aw.
pray 5 times a day to Ali. The spirit of Allah is Ali.
Oh, but Italic, me and Jay already had the debate. Well, it wasn't really a debate; it was more of a convo.
Cool.
Oh,
cool,
that's
cool.
nice. How'd it go?
What was the
Now
conversation
I'll
about?
convert all of you to Shia Islam now that we're.
Oh,
all
we
here.
agreed on like the question of continuity between like Sorelianism and fascism. We just talked about like culture issues or.
Sure.
So yeah, by the way, like I tried to listen in on the stage, and for some reason, like I couldn't hear anything. Maybe it was just like my internet or something. I don't know, but
Seamus,
it
you're in
is what it is.
Ukraine, right?
Maybe because
I am,
everybody else is here.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I guess something was wrong on my
You're
end.
you're gonna try to engage in Ukraine with me? Not a chance, buddy. I have picked up very little of the language.
Oh, you're a shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's Russian, by the way. It wasn't Ukraine. I don't know Ukraine. I know Russian because I'm actually from Ukraine.
Well, there's not the dialectical difference is regional mostly,
Yeah.
but that's with most Cyrillic languages. I mean, like Mongolian Cyrillic isn't all that different from Eastern Russian Cyrillic and all that. So
Okay. Hey, how's the war going? I heard it's not going so well. Are they?
Oh God.
It's over.
It's
Round
Joe.
2?
Anyway. Speaking of
No, I've
language.
been
sorry.
from first person perspective here. Nothing's going terribly wrong.
I mean, you had a counteroffensive and you got fucking destroyed. I mean,
God.
you had a lot of
Not
casualties.
really.
Sports already.
I'm just saying, it doesn't seem like it's going very well.
Where are all these casualties, my man?
I don't know.
I'm not seeing them.
Well, where are you fighting right
is
now?
Azog based?
I'm
Is Azog
in
based?
Kramatorsk.
Okay.
Kramatorsk. Okay. Well, I mean, I saw some like images
I
of
this
we destroyed
Romanian friend who said
destroyed
he was from
leopards. I think that's
Bakhmut
where
and
it's
he was
coming
like
from.
trolling people. He was like,
And
I'm
he
from
destroyed
Bakhmut,
leopards.
just like shelling outside. I was like, so
Oh, you
true.
mean caps? Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
20
caps.
people lived in Bakhmut by the end. No
Dude, I lived in Bakhmut.
way that somebody's just living in Bakhmut.
I lived in Bakhmut. That's why
Yeah,
I
bro.
converted to Shia Islam because I was like.
I'm currently
shit,
I'm currently
it's
playing in a
Jover.
shed in Bakhmut right now.
I'm the
Valid.
time to pray to Ali. It's Jover.
It's kind of weird. Like, why are you joining? Why are you fighting in Ukraine?
He's like, fuck it.
There's a bunch of reasons. Like a lot of different reasons, paradoxically.
Such as?
Well, first of all, it's a battle inherently between Western and Eastern philosophies. Right? Russia is the embodiment of one type of Eastern philosophy, not like Chinese, but
Wait,
its
so you're
own
fighting
unique.
for the West. So you're fighting for liberalism.
Oh,
I'm not
so
fighting
would you
for liberalism. I'm a Western
Literally what
exceptionalist.
you're doing. You're fighting for liberalism, my dude.
Okay, hold
No.
on. Wait, when you
No.
say
So under
Ukraine is
his
liberalism,
framework,
it is
which I don't
Western
agree with, but under
influence.
his framework, he's fighting for like Western.
Just saying, when you say like
philosophy, the
Eastern
What
philosophy,
Western
are you talking
philosophy is
about-
Ukraine? Capitalism,
talking
fucking
about-
degeneracy? That's not very
Yeah,
fascist.
but like,
to
when,
be
I,
I'm just-
I
I'm
don't
just giving
know
you-
what you're talking about,
Yeah,
like more like Orient, like
Y'all
Orientalism.
can't go all at the
we should
same
move this over
time.
to the stage if you guys want to
got-
have like a heated discussion.
Yeah, like,
you
well,
gotta
Evil,
go one at a time. You gotta
yeah,
go
like what
one
I
at a
was
time.
saying is like
Yeah,
for
well,
Eastern,
who's
if you're
this?
talking about, oh, it
Say
was,
say your name first, like your username or whatever the fuck first, and go.
King
Then
Debut.
make your
I'm
point.
Gravy Chief, but yeah, I was just gonna add a
All right,
comment when you were
Navy Chief.
saying about like Western Eastern philosophy. Would you say like when you're saying Eastern philosophy, are you talking like more of like an Orientalist view?
So it's paradoxical. I talked with fucking Jay with this a while back, but like the split between Eastern and Western philosophy is multifaceted. Like there is Oriental philosophy, which is what I'll refer to as Chinese philosophy, right? But there's also like Russia is also its own Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
It's heavily influenced by its own Eastern philosophers, completely separated from Western philosophers. For example, men like Hegel, like Kant, right, like Gentile, all these Western philosophers and idealists and whatnot. It is separated from that, and it's gone onto its own path of philosophy, mostly derived from from Marxian theorists and the later on, or earlier on rather, would have been theologists, right, of the Russian Orthodox Church. They're the ones who sort of like guided and goaded Russia down the path that it went to separate it from Western philosophy. So in that context, the Ukraine, which is now an embodiment of Western philosophy, not because my capitalism or my degeneracy or whatever the fuck the other guy was going to bring up, it's because the Ukraine has adopted a Westernized philosophy. Right, no longer does it rely upon things that Russia does. Right now, it is drawing itself to the West inherently. Therefore, right, as a Western exceptionalist, I'm obviously going to side with the Western country. Right now, opposition to liberalism is important, but the Western philosophy is such a broad spectrum. It encapsulates so much more than just liberalism and capitalism. Just because that is the predominant Western philosophy right now doesn't mean that's what I'm fighting for when I talk about Western exceptionalism. All
Effectively,
right,
you're fighting for that. You might be like
no, I'm
say all
not.
this bullshit about
200
Western
years
Eastern, but
ago,
effectively, you're fighting for liberalism. Effectively, that's
I'm
what you're
not
doing.
though. That's not the effect of it.
Effectively, you
One
are.
because
Ukraine
Zelensky.
is a
One,
puppet of the
hold on.
U.S., bro. Like,
One because Zelensky doesn't inhabit a liberalized philosophy. He's not a globalized economy. One, two,
he
his
literally wants to
economic
create fucking.
platform.
He wants to make
Hold
Ukraine into.
on, hold on. I'll let you speak in a second, but I want to get to my point first before you cut me off. All right? Is that fair, there, King Devil? I just
I mean,
unmuted you.
What I think I
whatever.
met this dude in
Sure.
like
Hey,
we in
we can
Trad
have constructive
Productions.
discussion. All right. Sorry,
Hey
what was
King
that?
Double, we in Trad Productions server like a couple months ago.
What?
Were
He's
you
asking
ever
if
in
you
the
were in some other
Trad
server.
Productions?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay, because I
Anyways,
remember I
anyways,
was he
one,
got mad because
Zelensky isn't a globalized economicist, right? He's not. Two, the system of economics currently being pursued in the Ukraine cannot effectively be described as liberalized capitalism. Right
Yes.
now, it's much more akin to state capitalism. The mass nationalization of banks, heavy industry, all that kind of stuff, has left it in a very state-controlled aspect. There's not much that is privately run. There's nobody that's making a lot of money off of this war right now because the whole of the control of the economic sphere, of the means of productions, you could say, is controlled by the government right now. Specifically, not by the government entity that should be controlling it, the Ministry of Economics, but the Ministry of Defense, of War, controls it right now. So it's not even being used for what would be considered economic production for the state. It's being used entirely for war production. It would be akin to war socialism. Like if you've read Clausewitz on war, or later on Ludendorff's book on war, they talk paradoxically and emphatically on the need of war socialism in a state that's fighting a conflict of such like large matter, right? So that's what Zelensky's gone down. It's not really a liberal system of economics or theory, really. Philosophically speaking, it's up in the air. But Ukraine still is working out its own identity, right? So there's that. Now you can have your piece.
Okay, so I think that was all a bunch of bullshit, honestly. Ukraine has always been a corrupt hellhole. It's been a corrupt hellhole as long as basically since Maidan happened. It's only getting worse under Zelensky. Right now, there's like a lot of reports about how they're stealing the money from that's going in for aid, and they're like fucking taking like millions out of it for themselves.
One, I want to
So
point
I
out
don't know what the
everywhere
hell you're
in
talking about when
Eastern
you.
Europe, everywhere in
So
Eastern Europe is corrupt.
Ukraine
I
is
just want to point that
is
out.
especially more
I mean,
corrupt.
not really. You can say especially corrupt, but it's just
It
as
is.
corrupt as Russia or
It's
Slovakia
more
or
corrupt than
Hungary.
Russia. I
I disagree.
I live in Ukraine. I used to live in. I have people who lived in Ukraine. I know this better than you do. So
All right, I'm right
you've
here.
been
I know
there.
it's fully corrupt.
You've been there for
I
a
know
couple
it's
months.
corrupt. I've been
I've
here
lived
for a
there
year,
for
buddy.
years, so I
I've been
think
here
I
for a
know what I'm
year.
talking about. Yeah,
First of all,
I
second of
was
all,
born there. I've been living
cool.
there
Yeah,
for years.
you're
You don't know what the
appealing
fuck you're talking
for.
about. Anyway, it's a
You
corrupt
let
hellhole.
you
This-
didn't let him talk. You didn't let him interrupt, so don't interrupt him.
I'm not interrupting. I was responding to a claim of corruption here, and I'm
I mean,
agreeing. Yes, it is corrupt. I was in fact agreeing
very
with this point.
corrupt. Zelensky is also
But it is
very
corrupt.
corrupt. He's done a lot of there's been a lot of some corruption scandals here and
Yeah,
there.
there's a certain industry that's very big in Ukraine.
Yeah, prostitution. He's also been funded by oligarchs. This is known. So I don't know where you're talking about where he's like some Western. He's a Western puppet. That's what Ukraine has been since Maidan happened. That's part of the reason why this war happened in the first place, because Russia didn't want the Western influence to become too ingrained into Ukraine, because they realized that would be a threat to their national securities. Hence the invasion.
Okay.
I don't know. So I don't really see where this whole liberalism
Since the
thing. All it
maiden.
is, it's a
Okay, you're saying that it's been
an
corrupt since the
expansion of
maiden. It
the
was corrupt
liberal
long
world
before the
order.
maiden.
It,
It's been corrupt. Putin is no
became more
different. What are you
corrupt.
talking about? He also takes money from oligarchs. He's also involved in mass corruption schemes. Like you're trying to paint Ukraine with a brush as if this doesn't also apply to Russia
It
itself,
does,
which
but
is
not to the same
extensively
extent.
corrupt.
Ukraine is
To
much more
even more extent,
No.
Russia is a plutocracy. It's ruled by its corporations. Putin doesn't just take money from Gazprom; he encourages them to form their own paramilitaries and send them to the front line to fight with him.
Well, Putin actually
He's
controls
living.
corporations.
Who controls the
Ukraine-
corporations? Various oligarchs. There's like
No, I said Putin
100 or
actually
200
he keeps
families.
the oligarchs.
No,
in
he
check.
doesn't. No, he keeps them
I
in
know.
check, but he does not control them. He does not control them. He does keep them in
no,
check.
I agree with that.
Mostly
Yeah,
through
Russia is
through
corrupt. I
threats.
agree with that. But Ukraine is much more
Extensively
corrupt.
so.
And at
Ukraine's
least Russia at least
corruption-
has economic growth. Ukraine was the richest Soviet republic during the Soviet Union, and now it's the poorest country because they just looted it completely, completely. And it was getting worse under Maidan. It was based on what my relatives tell me about it. It wasn't great, but it was fine before Maidan. After Maidan, it just became worse and worse. So it just seems to me like you're supporting
the
Western influence.
claim that Ukraine is getting poorer applies to all Eastern European countries. Poland, Ukraine, Russia is getting poorer.
Not to the same extent.
Yes, Russia is getting far more poorer than the Ukraine is. Statistically speaking, yes,
That's not true.
it is.
That is bullshit.
What? Yes, it is. Especially now due to the war and the sanctions. Yeah.
Okay, that's not true, but okay.
The ruble's value has raised ever since the war.
Yes, which
in the
isn't
beginning.
good for the Russian people. Do you understand how currency inflation and deflation works? The ruble was
the
so
Russian economy is
inflated-
doing fine for now.
No, it's
Ukraine
not.
economy isn't.
They're literally offering signing bonuses to buy people new phones because they can't afford anything in Russia. Their new recruitment ads for fucking the new volunteer battalions they're trying to raise is that we'll pay for your daughter's phone or so you don't have to sell your family car, so you can make payments on the car.
Yeah,
that's the new ads is putting out. No, the UK's military ad isn't, hey, are you a financially destitute?
We're gonna move it over to the debate channel or to the.
Are you financially destitute? You should join the army to make sure you don't starve this winter. That's not the UK's fucking pitch to join
Ukraine,
the
they
army.
just fucking take people off the streets and send them.
They do the same thing in Russia.
Not to the same extent, bro. Not to the same
to a far
fucking
worse extent. Did you not see the riots in Dagestan? Are you kidding me, buddy? Did you not see the riots?
I see you've taken up a little bit too much of Western propaganda,
Guys,
bro. I think it's
Western
melting your brain,
propaganda.
bro.
The Western propaganda.
I mean, I get it. I mean,
Okay, so we're gonna move over to the debate stage. I've been trying to tell you guys this for the whole time. You haven't been listening, so King DeBill,
Well, does it even
I'll unmute
matter?
you when we're over there, but we're going to move over there so it's more manageable. Okay.
Balls.
Okay. Where are we going?
Interesting.
Debate VC.
I don't know.
Because too many people are just talking.
Yeah, I don't know. Jalen, no one wants to leave. No one wants to leave.
Then I'm just
So
gonna boot all of you. Oh, okay.
Oh wait, do we go into the thing that says deboot?
Yeah.
I think
Oh.
All right, there we go. Seamus, King Nabil, you two can come on up, and whoever else wants to speak. Request to join using the ask to join button. Should be on the bottom of your phone.
are you trying to organize like an actual debate here? I don't.
No, I just don't like the constant cross-talking that's happening on the main channel.
Alright, can I speak?
Yep.
So it just seems to me like you've bought a lot of the Ukrainian propaganda, which makes sense since you're fighting there, but whatever.
It sounds like the polar opposite with you. That you've bought the Russian propaganda that everything's good and as it should be, which can't be true even by their own standards, my man.
Why can't it, I mean I don't believe the Russian propaganda. I know the war isn't like I don't think it's going like great for Russia, but I don't think it's going like great for Ukraine either.
I mean, in comparison, it's going far better than for the Ukraine than it is going for Russia by any metric.
By what standard are you basing that
By
claim
what standard? The capability, offensive capability, right? The ability to defend one's sovereign borders, the capability to defend the front line, right? The capability to make solid and consistent territorial gain,
on? Okay, I
right?
mean,
Casualty rates. All of these things are in favor of the Ukraine,
you
right?
think casualty rates are in favor of the Ukraine?
They are.
How much losses has Ukraine suffered?
It's for both sides. It's relatively unknown, but the running casualty rate that I'm aware of from where I'm sitting is that it's going about 1-4 in favor of Ukraine.
Okay.
Sometimes higher, sometimes lower, depending on the region and
Wow, you're
the
really sucking that Ukrainian cock,
specific
aren't you?
conflict. You're sucking the Ukrainian cock, buddy. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing these piles of dead bodies that everybody's talking about. I'm not
I mean, I'm
seeing
not
mass
seeing in the
graves of
Russian. If
Ukrainian
Russia
troops.
invaded with a smaller force, if it was as bad as you claim, they would have been the war would have been over by now.
With a smaller force, they invaded with most of their professional army. The 1.1 million figure that Russia quotes is 90% mandatory conscripts who have to do their fucking 16 weeks, something like that course where they have to do service. They're not allowed to be deployed outside of Russian soil unless there is like an actual war ongoing, which Russia refuses to declare in the Ukraine. So the vast majority of the actual force that Russia quotes having right isn't there. It's not a real thing. The actual professional forces, the contract soldiers, right, are what invaded the Ukraine, 300 to 400,000 men. That, of course, is excluding the handful of men that were in Syria, the guys that are in Armenia, right, as peacekeepers, the guys that are in Transnistria. There are, of course, exclusions to that rule. It's not every single contract soldier, but it was the bulk of the contract army, right? And then the mobilizations went through, and they mobilized hundreds of thousands of more men, and they pumped them into the front line. And then, of course, they had other groups. They had Wagner, which then did the prison recruiting. They had other PMCs risen by Gazprom and the Department of Defense, Shagaru's boys. I think they're called Patriot or something like that. Anyways, and then you had Kadyrev's Chechens. You had various other groups. You had some volunteers from around Europe, mostly Hungarians.
You know, to be honest, I don't really care about this, like either of the countries, Russia or Ukraine, nor Ukraine actually. I don't care for. Both of them can lose. You know.
Do you respect me? No, you're black.
The reality is, Russia is a more corrupt nation. So, do with that info what you will. Ukraine, they have to lose. They have to. Like, I don't see them winning at all. Russia was just going to resort to nuclear armaments, nuclear arms, just sooner or later, which is just a big problem for the West. On the other hand, Ukraine is definitely a Western puppet, Zelensky, he's a puppet. We know this because of the Maidan. So, Yeah.
And militias like right sector, pro-Fuzzy sector, right? And other groups like that did a lot of the initial fighting, especially in places like Sunni, for example. I had a good discussion, in fact, with he was a Russian officer.
Yeah, there are like just a bunch of neo-national socialist paramilitary groups like the Right Sector and the Azov Battalion. So, it's a bunch of Natsoks. Not even true fascists.
Efforts, conscription, stuff like that. Normal for a nation at war. I think it's nearing 1 million men at most. I mean, you could also include, the paramilitary groups, the National Guard, territory like the state border defense. I know that the police has some active units that they send off.
Seamus, the position you need to take up is total global exclusionarianism, okay? So every state ever is bad right now.
True. It's not wrong. All the states are bad. I'm just a Western
True.
exceptionalist. I support
That's
the West.
so
I
gay,
don't support liberalism. I support the West.
The West is liberalism, though.
Well, just
It
saying.
isn't. The West is just a area, a concept, right? It's not anything per se. It's what you make of
Well,
it.
right now
Yeah,
it's
sorry,
it's
go
right
ahead
now
there.
it's liberalism.
Yeah, right now it is, and then 200 years ago it was feudal, or aristocratic rather, and then 200 years before that it was feudal. Things change constantly. But sorry, go ahead there, Gravy Chef. I
So
cut
how
you
do you
off.
think? How do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah.
Hold on, hold on,
fighting
no, no.
Ukraine?
No, hold on, King. We cut off Gravy. Let him have his little piece here. It's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, I'm kind of glad that we're talking more about this now instead of the war, because when we talk about the war, it's just very convoluted because, like, all the estimates and stuff. But, like, what I wanted to ask
Well,
you
the issue
was,
with the war is that we don't know any solid numbers. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, exactly. But, yeah, well, so I wanted to ask, like, why, because, like, you describe yourself as, like, a classical fascist, right?
I don't like the term classical fascism. It implies that there's other types.
Oh,
There
wow.
really isn't. But yeah, I guess if you're going to go by like the broader aspect where other people claim to be fascists, right? But yeah, you can
So,
say that.
like, what would you say is like your main? Well, obviously, you don't have a main motivation, but like your motivations for fighting for Ukraine, because like obviously like someone that that would call himself like a fascist would you know they would have like a motivation for fighting for both sides, I guess.
I mean, to some extent, I guess you could say that like, oh, you go and fight for Russia, you're undermining the liberal world order. You're not. Russia is liberal. It's just 20 or 30 years culturally behind the rest of the world, or the Western world rather, right? In that aspect, like in truth, if this war took place like 50 years in the future, there would be no difference between the Russia and the West, because the thing is that liberalism is really good at globalization, and that's a bad thing, right? It's really good at like subverting countries into its worldview. It's very good at that. It's infectious, right? I mean, even Marx commented on this with like the 1848 revolutions and everything, with how that brought liberalism out. I mean, it's infectious how quickly this thing spreads, right? How much it undermines things. Like Sorrell covers it too in his discussion of how like they've pacified the masses with welfarism and whatnot, like that, right? So like yeah, like the only difference is time. Like when Putin dies, Russia is just going to be another oligarchic republic like the Ukraine, Hungary, Romania, right? No different.
Yeah, I would say that unless because like I'm not sure. Like I know like Putin, yeah, obviously he has some way to like keep the oligarchs in check, but like when he dies, I heard from a friend talking about this about like a successor. Like my friend has a theory that his successor is going to be a lot more radical, but I mean I don't know, that's just a theory.
I mean, I don't think so. I think his successor is going to be much calmer because his predecessor was pretty fucking calm and inept, right?
The successor of
That
G
didn't
might
really
be
go very
radical,
well.
but not the successor of Putin. Definitely not.
No, yeah. China will continue to radicalize until it explodes. That's Chinese history. Like every 200 years, you get a brand new China because like it get radical and more radical and more radical until finally it just cannot take it and blows the fuck up into 1,000 different pieces and puts itself back together. And it's done that like 9 times in the past. So we can bet on it happening again. But Russia, no, it'll get more modern and less autocratic. And that's how it's always been. You went from Tsar to Lenin to fucking fucking what's his face? Stand on the tank guy, fall down drunk. King, you know his name.
Yeltsin.
Yeah, Yeltsin. That's it. Fuck up the
What do you
Chechen
think of
War, right?
Stalin, by the way?
Stalin. Stalin was a
Stalin was
murderous
fucking awful.
retard. Yeah,
Wait,
a
you think
paranoid
you,
schizophrenic.
but you like Mussolini?
I don't like Mussolini. No,
You don't like Mussolini?
Mussolini was overly Machiavellian and at points openly coward-like in his,
But he
you know,
And a
built the basis
composure.
of
sellout, and a
fascism.
sellout above all things.
No, yeah, he's a sellout too. He didn't really build the basis. He picked it up from other people. He was just a really good speaker. I mean, like,
But
he
fascism
wasn't
is based
even
on like
unique at
his
that.
No,
policies.
it's not.
No,
No,
it
it's
isn't.
not. It's not based on
It's
anything
based on
Mussolini made.
Boileau.
Mussolini applied it. He created no part of the ideology. None of it.
You know, he picked it up. Boileau invented it. Gentile explained it, and Mussolini just like tried to do it, and then fucking canceled halfway through because he got the spooks. Because the king was like, I don't like this socialism stuff.
But he
Mussolini's
was
like,
a
okay,
national
well,
syndicalist. He implemented nationalist
he was.
syndicalism.
He was a national syndicalist.
So
And he did
Yeah, and
good
that
in
that wasn't
implementing
made by him.
the
That
union
was not
system.
made by him. The
No, it was
philosophy
not
was not
invented
made
by
by
him.
him. None of it
It
was
was
made
not
by him.
invented by him. He was a good speaker who was in the right place at the right time to take over that movement. Otherwise, it would have been like Italo Balbo, and you would have seen a very different world.
I mean, but you could say the ideology of fascism came to like was effectively like implemented by him. Like he was the one who gave it
He
form.
started to,
Initially,
yeah.
but they chickened out midway through.
So how did
Like
they?
he got
What do
like
you mean by chicken out?
so
He
he
sold
started
out
it.
to
He
the
started
ruling
off with
elites.
well,
And the
not really
Nazis
the
later
ruling
on.
elites. He sold out.
Well, the
out
Catholics
first
seem
and
to be a part of that.
foremost. Yeah, he sold out to the Catholic Church, which was a big hit to his popularity. And then he sold out to the Nazis, and that killed his popularity, and nobody wanted to help him anymore, right? But no, the Mussolini adopted a French ideology, right? That Valo invented, and then it was baptized in the trenches of World War One.
By the way,
Right?
guys, I don't want to interrupt. I think Italic wants to say something. A little
Yeah.
Dago.
I'm gonna hop off the stage for now because I don't think I have anything else to say. So yeah.
He's pretty
All right.
knowledgeable on this stuff. I think maybe he can discuss
I
this with
feel
him.
like you're just going to talk about Shia Islam. Well, let's bring him on.
No, he's not. He's just trolling. He's. Hey, Italic, you're here.
Hey, can you guys hear me clearly? Am I coming through?
Yeah, we.
Sweet. So I would actually disagree and say that Mussolini did create the ideology. So I get where you guys are coming from, though. I do get where you're coming from. I would say he picked up different pieces of different ideologies and put it together to create fascism. But if we're talking in a literal sense, the original movement, it was like the fascist combative action. I forget what it's called in Italian. I should really know, but it was created in 1914 by Mussolini, December 1914.
It wasn't
Mussolini.
created by Mussolini.
No, it was not.
It was
He joined
created in
later on.
1914 by Angiolio, who was a middle-class Jew and a
Yeah,
lawyer.
if you look at the Wikipedia page, nowhere in the founding does it say it was created by Mussolini.
No, Mussolini
well,
joined later
1915,
on.
he gave a speech at their first Congress, but anyway, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure he did.
yeah,
create it, but I
did.
can address
He
that.
did
I can
join
address
on
that
later
later.
on, and because he was a good
It
speaker,
was
he
like
became
January
the
1915. He
leader.
gave a speech at their first Congress, so he's effectively their leader by within a couple of months. So I mean, it's potato, really, honestly.
Not really.
I mean, if
Well,
he,
no,
if
it's
he,
very
if your
important to
leader, okay,
understand
okay,
because
If somebody makes an
because-
ideology and then
let
you
me get my
join,
point.
no matter, no, I'm gonna say something. If you like join an ideology that was formed even like a week before you hopped on board, no, you didn't create it. I'm sorry, that's just
Sure. So then I
plagiarism.
guess you could say Gentile
But
didn't create fascism either because he didn't even
He
join
didn't.
the movement
He
until
didn't, dude. He
1923.
didn't.
Perfect. So we can agree
He
that
didn't.
Gentile did not create it. Cool. Great.
I didn't. Nobody said that.
posited that.
Gentile
Nobody
explained it.
I've heard a bunch of people say that. I've heard a bunch of retards.
No,
say
he was a very important to explaining
Sure.
fascism. He was very crucial to that because he understood it. He understood the philosophy and the economics behind it because it was from France. Valo and the French knew this. Valo in 1910 merged the syndicalism with Sorel, who was his mentor. Yeah, Georges Valo.
Are you talking about Circle Proudhon right now?
The aftermath of Circle Proudhon. Circle
Okay, so what
Proudhon
came
wasn't
after?
anything of
Yeah.
anything. Immediately
Sure.
after that, Valo formed a group. Hold on, I think I sent you the name, Jay, or I might have sent it somewhere else. But the name was like the Society for the Investigation of National Syndicalism in France, or something like that. And then the next year, in 1911, that became the Society for Revolution in France. And then the year after that, in 1913, that became the Society for the Union, Fascio, of France.
By the way, the Wikipedia Fascio di Azione Revolucionaria, it says, was on the Wikipedia, so take it as a grain of salt. It was an Italian political movement founded in 1914 by Benito Mussolini, and active mainly in 1915.
So yeah,
So again, the
Hold
guy
on.
said on
So
Wikipedia it does not say this, which it does say this on Wikipedia.
No, it
actually.
doesn't say that for the prior group.
It says this is Fascio di Azione Rivoluzionaria. It's split from the Union Sindacaliste Italiana. It's split from that, and it's split from the Italian Socialist Party. But Fascio di Azione Rivoluzionaria was founded by Benito Mussolini in 1914.
okay, so
It
we
was
go to
active in
Fascione.
1915,
Hold
so
on, hold
that's
on,
kind
hold
of
on, hold on. I'm gonna help you out here. I'm gonna help you out here. Switch the language to Italian. Do that first.
I don't know.
So this was prior to the Fascio Rivoluzionario di
And then
Azione
go.
Internazionale.
Yeah.
This is the
And then you
Fascio
go to the Fascio Revolutionary Internationale Internationalistia, right? That was written by Alviro Alberti, right? Not by Mussolini. In fact, Mussolini wasn't even a part of the writing committee. Michel Blanchi was. Blanchi was there.
I'm sorry to inform you,
Ombris was.
I am always right. I promise you.
But yeah, it was founded by Angiolillo off of his manifesto, which went out October 5th, 1914. And then Mussolini joined and became its leader very quickly. Or if you go to Angiolillo's page in Italian, it also says that, by
this
the way.
seems like you're basically saying. I mean, you would then say, would you say then that Hitler wasn't the
Basically,
creator of Nazism?
yeah, I
Because
He
mean,
wasn't. Nazism was
listen,
invented in
dude.
1905 in Austria. The first
Sure.
Nazi party came about in 1905 in
but
Austria. And
effectively, he was
Hitler's.
the one who like made it what it was. Same thing with
Yeah, he
Mussolini.
I
was. But
mean, that's
the
the big
difference.
thing I'm trying to get at here. He's what
Hold
made it
on.
what it
The
made
big
the fascism
difference. The big difference between Mussolini, who adopted a doctrine that was already well established, and Hitler is that the National Socialists didn't have a doctrine. They never did. Right? They were
Yes, they
always
did.
surrounded by the Führerprinzip. No, they didn't.
They
The
did.
Führerprinzip was no. Strasser tried to at the Hamburg Conference,
It
1926.
wasn't Strasser I'm referencing. There's a guy before I forget his name, but there's a guy before Strasser who's an
You
Austrian.
mean
who wrote
Anton
a- he wrote-
Drexler?
No, not Drexler. It was not Drexler. It was a guy before those guys. He called it the National Socialist it was the German National Socialist Workers Party. It was an Austrian party, and he basically
Yeah,
wrote
1905, right?
party documents. He was involved with the founding of the with the NSDAP in Germany later.
The German National Socialist Worker Party founded in 1905, right? That's the one we're talking about.
I believe so. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah,
I believe maybe it might.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
might
Yeah, no, it wasn't. He didn't write the ideology. In 1903, my bad, I got the year wrong. It was 1903, founded Bohemia, Moravia, part of the Austrian Empire, right? But then it moved to Austria in 1905, right? That's on me there. But no, they didn't have a doctrine with those either.
Oh, he
They
did
just
write
adopted.
stuff before the war. Actually, no, he did write a
Yeah, no, he
document.
did.
Political
He did.
manifesto.
He did
No,
write. He did
before the
write
war,
some
he did.
stuff, but he didn't write. He didn't write a doctrine. He did write some stuff, but he did not write a cohesive doctrine. In fact, he refused to even after the war because he didn't believe a cohesive doctrine would suit it. In fact, he was the one who wanted to establish a Führerprinzip in Austria. And that's why his party fell apart until Hitler started to gain popularity. The Austrian Nazis wouldn't come back into like the mid 1920s, late 1920s from their blow up before and during World War One, where they split several times over the concept of Führerprinzip. And then you had Drexler in Germany, who picked up the pieces, which tried to form a doctrine, but then Hitler threw Drexler's work out, and like Drexler was never again mentioned.
I'm not saying that Drexler. I'm not arguing that Drexler was.
Yeah, no. Then Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, which is the closest thing you get to a doctrine, but it's not really a doctrine. It's sort of like these are my ideas, and he made sure that they were his ideas, not the National Socialist Party's ideas, or rather, any party's ideas. And he was big on that because at the time,
how would you define fascism?
How would I define fascism? National syndicalism, actual idealism.
That's it? Just national syndicalism and actual idealism?
Well, that is what constitutes fascism, yes.
What about nationalism?
Nationalism, fascism, famous. Yeah, that's part of national syndicalism. It is not the same physical nationalism that you will see, like the blood and soil of the Nazis or like I love my country stuff. It's actually the exact opposite. If you look at Vallot's writings, I think I sent this to Jay even, yeah, where it's like we must fucking hate our countries in order to be real patriots, which is a very interesting form of nationalism. It's called revolutionary nationalism, and that came around.
I don't think anyone's contesting that. Like, yeah, they hated their establishment countries. Yeah, they hated the way.
Well, no, not just the establishment. They hated the country. and they needed to rebuild it completely.
Well, sure. I
That's
mean,
the
that's the
point.
entire point of revolutionary syndicalism is rebuilding your country
Yeah,
under the
it is.
syndicalist model. I mean, that's
It
should be
is.
common
That's true.
knowledge.
Yep.
For most people.
And that was invented by the French, not by the
Yeah,
Italians.
no, yeah. It's from.
But they're the ones who actually applied it. Like, say what you will. Like, Mussolini
The
applied
first
it.
one to apply it, was actually D'Annunzio in Fiume. If you want to be real about it, real semantical, he was the first to apply it. Okay.
Did he have a syndical? I'm not too aware.
He did
of
have
his
syndicalism. In fact, Ambrose wrote his syndicalism. So you had one of the
again,
OG.
I'm not aware of. As much
Oh,
of
who would you say is like what's your example?
And
like
it
a
was actually
fascist?
way better than the Italian
It
fascist
was.
model
It
of,
was
because they
because he
excluded the
didn't.
proprietors from representation.
Yeah,
I would
and
actually, I
also
would
he
actually
didn't.
agree
He
that
also
that was,
didn't.
that's
He
my
also
big
didn't have to
criticism of Italian fascism.
like. He didn't also. He also didn't have to work with the fucking king. So he's just able to like raw dog it, and run with it. Didn't need to worry about the
So
king saying
what
stuff.
else? Who would you say
That
was
would
like an
that would actually
actual
be my big
example of
criticism of
fascist?
Italian fascism.
Want actual examples of fascism? Well,
Yeah,
you have
here.
Mussolini in his phase between. I would say the best you get out of him is between 1927, the Charter of Labor, and 1935. Right, that's like core fascism.
What about
Beforehand,
the
you get
Italian Socialist Republic?
Social.
yeah, there are signs. Well, he wanted to call it socialist, but he couldn't because Hitler got mad. But no, it was. It's hard to because one, it was a German puppet, and I was very open about it, and that's why Mussolini hated it. And two, it tried to like go way too fast into fascism. It like skipped a bunch of steps and jumped right into like the most radical aspects of it because they were trying to make up for lost time. And you can mostly contribute that to Nicola Bombici rather than Mussolini or anybody else. Bombashi, whatever the fuck. I
I've
mispronounce
heard
things
that
all the time.
I'm
Bombaci
autistic
helped
with
to
Italian
write
names, my
that, but
bad.
I've yet
Yeah,
to
I know.
see any like actual evidence that Bombaci
I
actually wrote
mispronounce things all the
the
time,
manifesto
so
for
don't
Rona.
don't take
No, you're
offense
all
to
good.
any of it. I just
No,
mispronounce
you're
shit
all good.
all
You're all good. Not a
the
big deal.
time.
Not a big
But
deal.
yeah, no, Bombashi was big on that one, and I could get you some quotes on him being big on that if you want, Jay. But it's gonna take a little bit. Anyway, D'Annunzio was the first. He was the first and the most pure of them, right? Because he didn't have anybody. Yeah,
Who was
Gabriel
Nunzio?
D'Annunzio. Gabriel
Gabriel
D'Annunzio.
D'Annunzio was a Italian revolutionary. He created the Free State of Fiume, where he was the
Yeah,
leader
and
of
that
the
was
Free
the
State
first
of
fascist
Fiume.
state. He took a bunch of deserted Italian soldiers, took them to the state to a city that was supposed to become Italian but had been given to Yugoslavia and occupied it, right? And then he's my hero. You know, he had cocaine orgies in government buildings and you know encouraged all sorts of incredibly fun shit. While also having a very professionally written out constitution and workable government with the economic theory.
How
So,
long did it
he had the
last?
like, what was it? Like a year? Yeah, a little over a year. 12th of September 1919 to 29th of December 1920. They only went down because the Italian army and navy fucking destroyed the city.
Okay. Is any other
Yeah.
examples?
Sure, you have Austria under what's
Dolphus?
his name? No, Dolphus started it, but he never really got to see it fulfilled under Kurt Schüsselnegg.
That was the guy who
Um,
came after Dolphus?
yeah, the guy who came after Dolphus. In his book Austrian Requiem, he gets right to the heart of it. He did a good job. Who else could we look at? We could look at Metaxas in Greece. His deputy prime minister was very clear on the goals of Greece to be an embodiment of fascism. We can look at Tiso in Slovakia. Despite the fact that he was made a German puppet, he worked very hard to ensure that the fascist state was made to the specifics of the doctrines. Right. We can look at Perón in Argentina, although he never got to see it fully fulfilled because he was couped twice. Right, Jay? Twice?
No, just once.
Once and then died, right?
His wife got overthrown after
Right.
though.
Trying
But
to
she was
continue his
kind of
work.
a
Yeah, yeah.
retard. She was a little bit. She was a rightist. She was really right wing.
Was she? Well, that's why the Piranhas Party, the judicial, is split, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tried to, but he died or got overthrown and all that shit before he could really see it fully fulfilled. But he started some of the important stuff. Other example. Oh, modern one. The Karen State in Myanmar. You got them. They're pretty cool. Where else? I could argue Eritrea, but information on Eritrea is pretty sparse. I might go there sometime. They have an open invitation to fascists, which is interesting.
I don't actually know anything about. What is that? Or Eritrea?
Eritrea, it's an African country. It used to be a colony of
Yeah, it used to
Italy.
be an Italian colony.
But they maintained all of like the Italian laws and whatnot that were implemented by the fascists, because they see the fascism as a liberator from Ethiopia, who wants to annex them. So they're very supportive of it. In fact, they invited like Italian fascists from Casapound to come and build hospitals and whatnot. It's pretty cool. Same with the Karens. Other examples.
Seems like a lot of just obscure stuff that I've never heard of.
Lebanon under Bashir Gemayel in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, or 70s and 80s, right? 70s and 80s. Bashir Gemayel. His party's still around, but it's sort of like it's been bastardized. His brother's a retard. Didn't really pick up the slack. I think that's the sum of them. Small count. I would argue Fidel Castro, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that.
But no, Fiume was definitely the most pure of the expressions.
So what is your
Mostly
issue
because
with Italian
sorry,
fascism?
with Italian fascism, Mussolini cucked out. He was too Machiavellian. He was way too willing to compromise with every sector of society. He compromised with the church when his guys were out
Yeah,
burning
wasn't
down
his
churches and
favorite
killing
book.
priests.
Yeah,
Hmm?
yeah.
Wasn't his favorite
I
book.
mean, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, Machiavelli, the Machiavellian, like I think The Prince was his favorite book. No, his favorite
Wait,
print.
you don't,
His
wait, wait,
favorite.
wait, wait. You don't think him compromising with every sector of society was a bad thing?
I don't think him compromising with the
What?
church is bad.
Why? He
It is
just
bad. The
undermined
church
his
is
own
bad.
power. He just gave away his
mean,
power to the
Why would you
church. That's all
support
he did.
burning down churches? That's a little
Because that's what the
extreme.
fascists wanted to do at the beginning.
Originally,
I don't
yeah,
think that's a
that is
good
Balbo-
thing.
that
I
is
don't think
actually
burning down
Balbo-
churches is a
they were
The
good
originally
thing.
abolition of
anti-clerical.
organized religion
They
is a
were
good
originally
thing, Broski.
anti-clerical.
Balbo
They were
Balbo
originally.
literally shot a priest. That is why he became popular among the black shirts. It's because
Dude,
a priest.
Mussolini would throw rocks at the clergy when he was a kid. Like
He would, and like he wrote a book called the Cardinal, right, where he like shits. He got arrested for it in Austria, how anti-clerical it was. Like initial fascism of the first hour, the sense of tomorrow,
Was
were
against the church.
horrifically. Weren't just against the church; they were horrifically anti-clerical. Like Balbo got accused of anti-Semitism in Libya because he beat a fucking Jew for not taking the Sabbath, and then they explained to him that it was like very important to them. And he's like, "Oh no, this wasn't anti-Semitism. I just hate religion.
Okay.
No issue with the Jews, guys. He shouldn't be taking a day off. Back to work."
I mean, I think that's a little too extreme, personally. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's a
might
personal opinion. The doctrine says that you should burn churches and kill priests.
Okay, I disagree with that part of the doctrine. I guess I'm not really a fascist.
Disagree with
then.
a fundamental. Yeah. It's surprising what you come to, right?
Yeah, no,
Alright,
they
I
actually did.
mean,
They actually did. They actually did believe in that. Yeah, I've been trying to tell you that for a bit. That's what I meant when I was saying that they were anti-clerical at the beginning.
Yeah.
They were like very.
No, they were very, and they were anti-clerical on the our side too. They bombed
Yeah,
the
they
Vatican,
were.
dude.
Yeah,
they
they were.
bombed
At
the
the end, they
Vatican
became very anti-clerical. Yeah,
because now
at
they
the
had all
end,
the
they
old
also.
guys back in. Yeah,
They were. Yeah.
the middle period was when they mellowed out and they had all the old guys put
Yeah,
in like unimportant positions.
Yeah, basically
anyway,
basically they made a lot of compromise, a lot of people during the middle period in order to gain power. So that kind of changed some of the beliefs, or how would I put this? Perverted. I don't know if perverted is the right word.
It is a
it
good word for it.
moderated. It
It
moderated
perverts.
some of the
Yeah, they changed some of their
It
moderated
did
some of
beliefs,
the
both.
extreme.
It did both. It
especially with
moderated
they were
some
more
parts and perverted
anti-aristocratic
others.
too. There are a lot of retards who think that fascism's like aristocratic when it's not. It's pretty anti-aristocratic, and it's
It comes from
pretty
Evola because
Yeah,
everybody
Evola.
associates
Evola was
Evola with
people think
fascism now.
Evola's
I know.
fascist retards.
I know. I shit on that all the time. Evola was an anti-fascist.
Yeah, he
He
literally said
wrote
he was a
for an
super
anti-fascist
fascist. He was
newspaper.
beyond
Yeah.
fascist.
No,
He
that's
was
a mistrans. That's a
Yes, exactly.
mistranslation.
No,
He
no,
said-
It's a
he said he's
mistranslation.
The word is
post-fascist. He said
supra.
he's
The word is
post-fascist.
supra.
He said he's- No,
I
I'm
know.
agreeing. I'm agreeing. He's saying he's
Okay.
post-fascist. He's beyond fascism. He's beyond.
Yeah, because
he's
like
anti-
the court says, yeah, the court accused him of fascism, right? And some
Mhm.
American journalists thought that what he said was he was a super fascist, and what he said is I'm above fascism, right?
Yeah, it's a
He's trying to
mistranslation.
shit on it, right? Yeah, it is
It's a
mistranslation. He's trying to say
mistranslation.
that he's
That
too
happens a lot.
aristocratic for fascism.
Yeah, exactly. He criticized fascism for not being aristocratic, and he
Yeah, he said it
criticized
was
for
too
being
much of a mass
proletarian.
movement.
Yeah, he said
Too
his
proletarian,
words
too much
were
of a
too
mass
proletarian. His
movement.
criticism was it was too
Yeah.
proletarian.
Yeah. But no, like,
I don't like Avola at all. But
but
yeah.
people associate that with those concepts because of
So,
Ebola with
so
fascism. You get
basically,
like
you
Umberto
think
Eco at
your
his
problem
point.
with Italian fascism is it compromised too much with
Yeah, he
other.
cucked out. He cucked
Don't
out,
you
and
think?
even Balbo said it. You
Don't
will
you
end
think
up
it's just
shining
part
the
of like
boots of the
being a leader?
Nazis.
Like sometimes you have to like
No,
compromise with
no
those.
No, that's
compromise.
terrible. That's retarded.
No
Liberal
compromise.
mindset. Liberal fucking
That is a
take.
liberal mindset.
That's absolutely a
No
liberal
compromise. You
uncuck.
have an idea. You
Absolutely
have an
cucked,
idea.
dude.
You have an idea. You stick to it. You ever heard of a man called Robespierre? You have an idea. You stick to it.
He didn't really. Hey, to be fair, he didn't really stick to his ideas though. He kind of like moved around a lot.
Well, after he
To,
moved on from pacifism, he stuck to his final idea.
Yeah, and they
Like
got him killed.
And
wait,
Napoleon.
What-
wait, that has
What
nothing to do
Napoleon
with
took
servant-
over.
Hey, wait.
He
what
was
that has
what
willing
nothing to
to
do with
servant
compromise.
what servant of his country wants to outlive the moment when he can no longer serve it, huh? Death is not the commencement of eternal sleep. Face that motto from your tomb. Death is the commencement of immortality.
I mean, it seems like you like sometimes you have to compromise just to retain power and then
No, you
use
did
that power.
No,
No, if that's what
no,
you have
I'd
to do,
rather
then
die.
you aren't doing it right.
I mean,
Just
there's a
rather-
reason that all the movements you are like super obscure, like all the actual fascists that you talked about are super obscure. I'm just
Because of
saying, man.
liberals. That's it. That's all. That's why.
It's literally because of liberals.
That's literally it.
Karens are obscure because the entire world wants to kill the Karens. The Chinese Communist Party works hand in hand with America to kill the Karen state in Myanmar. You know that, right?
I don't even know what that is, so not really.
The Karen state, they're rebels against the Myanmar government. They've been rebelling since the 1940s. They adopt fascism thanks to Casa Pound in the early 2000s. They are now at war with basically everybody in the world because of that, because they adopt fascism. They fly
You
fascism.
should
They
have
reread the
volunteered to fight
documents
with
for their
them instead of Ukraine.
people. Oh, I was going there next, but like I don't like the language. There's like nobody speaks English in Myanmar. I'm sorry to tell you that. It'd be very hard to like integrate and learn the language. So I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't know. I
There are
I think some compromises are good. Like, I don't think compromising with the church is a bad thing. Maybe he did compromise too much to some extent. I mean, I don't know. Tal,
did.
what do you think?
I think he did compromise too much. I'd say that the model of economics they adopted was they didn't go far enough. That's always my big criticism of Italian fascism is they deviated too much from their syndicalist roots.
They
Because
retained too many elements of capitalism.
Yeah, they had employers guilds, which is my big criticism. One of my big criticisms of Italian fascism. I think they should just.
It's a
had,
good criticism. It's good
I think they should
criticism.
just had workers guilds, and I think
Don't
that the
you think
workers
that maybe
guilds should have
over
had a bit
time
more
that would have
power.
developed? He had to compromise, but over time he would have had like.
Sure, but yeah, I mean,
No, I
ideally-
get that point, and I make that point a lot that it takes time to fascistize a country. But he compromised too much in the essence. He shouldn't. Like, I can understand establishing an employers guild, right? I can understand that in the part of of the fascistization. Yeah, the temporary things like that. Those are okay. But when he just starts giving up like powers back to the king, and he gives up powers to the church over the people, right? When he allows the church, he did, because none of them were legitimate in their care for the country or anything. They only cared about their own self-interest. That's why you can never trust a monarchist. You can never trust a fucking theocrat. You can never trust any kind of nationalist except for the one that you're hand in hand with. The fucking communists were more upfront and fair with Mussolini than the goddamn the king was and the church was.
Oh,
Okay,
for sure. They definitely. I think the left. The red brown alliance is definitely, I think, better than like the monarchist fascist alliance, which I think just usually leads to.
It's the red black. We're not brown.
Either.
We're not. Yeah, no, traditionals are
It's just
stupid.
a term.
It's
It's
not.
just a term. It's just a term. It's just a term.
It's not red. It's not red brown. It's red black. Okay, the color of fascism is black. It's not
Are you
brown.
being? Okay, I mean, all right.
It's
fine, whatever.
semantics. I know. It's semantical. I know, but it's true. Right? The color of the brown shirts was brown. We're the black shirts, right? Fascists were the black shirts.
Anyway, I don't know. I feel like you have to like compromise to some extent to like retain power if you're like in not in like depending on what your position
No,
is.
you
So
just
maybe he
kill
did
people who try
compromise
to
a little
stop
too
you,
much, but there
broski.
was some compromise.
Broski. You just kill people if they try to make you compromise with them. That's all you
Not
do as a
always
leader.
that easy, bro. You need a power base.
No,
like,
it is.
that's not
It
how
is. It is.
politics
You
work.
just shoot them. You
can't
shoot
just
them.
kill.
It is that easy, actually.
It is pretty
Someone-
easy.
Seamus,
Ask Robespierre.
Seamus.
What's up?
James, can you send
What's
me do you have an English translation of the because my Italian's very mediocre. Do you have an English translation of the Fascio Rivoluzionario di Azione Internazionalista? You have an English translation of that?
The manifesto.
Yeah. 1914.
Yeah.
Can you
Let's
send
see.
that over to me? Do you have an English
I
translation
might
of
have
it?
one. I might
Okay,
have
if
an
you,
English
if you,
translation. But
if you have an
I remember
Italian,
a lot of the
I can
points.
read Italian, but it'll just not as well. Very mediocre at reading
I
Italian.
feel
I
like
remember a good number of the tenets of it though. Like
Well, if worst comes to worst, you can just tell me the tenets of it. If worst comes to worst, but
yeah, and I'll send you like the original too in the Italian, so that if I can find it, so that you don't just like later on go, well, maybe he was just making it up or something like that. I know. I have good faith. I have good faith that you wouldn't, but like just in case something like that, so you have something to refer to
I
as
just
well.
want a reference.
Let's
And
see
if
I can
need be, I
find
could
this.
always if need be, if you just have an Italian, I can always translate it in English.
I know it wasn't that ideological. The first one, the
Probably not.
internationalist one.
Wouldn't surprise
It
me.
was more discussing like how they should support the war.
Yeah.
anyway, go back
I
to
know.
the
I know
point.
a lot of the fascists call it the Fourth War of Italian Independence or something.
What I was trying to say is that compromise
Unnecessary.
is pretty essential
That's what
to
I call it,
retain
actually.
power, because like if you can't compromise, then usually your power base like you lose your power base over time, because eventually just people just start leaving you because you're not able to like.
I disagree.
I mean,
The
that's
first
usually the
maximum
case.
of your policy ought to be to lead the people by reason and the people's enemies by terror.
But people aren't reasonable. That's the thing. People aren't.
I know they're
reasonable.
not. That's why you
So
need terror. If the mainstream of popular government in peacetime is virtue, the mainstream of popular government in revolution is both virtue and terror, because virtue without terror is disastrous, and terror without virtue is powerless.
Seamus, you know what I
Terror
think
is
Lenin
nothing but
really needed?
prompt, severe,
Seamus,
inflexible justice.
Seamus, you know what I think Lenin really needed to do is just, like talk it out with the king a little bit, like think about it a little. Just like be
Citizens, do you want a
reasonable.
revolution without a revolution?
that's the thing.
He
Even
just
Lenin
needed
had
to
to
compromise. Oh, broski.
And
Lenin
bro.
didn't compromise.
killed
Lenin didn't
killed the
compromise.
king.
Okay,
He killed the
let's do
king.
this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's go over this. Lenin takes power, right? And the left, the center left guys, they go, hey, we should be internationalist and cool and encourage a revolution in like Germany, and Lenin shot them. And then the further left guys were like, well, that was kind of sudden.
New
You shouldn't do
economic
so.
policy,
Hold
bro.
on.
New economic
I'm
policy.
not even there yet. We've just started with the first purge, 1917. He's just shot all of the internationalists except for Trotsky. Next, the further left guys are like, wow, that was kind of sudden. Maybe you should be a little more autocratic. He shoots them. They're gone. So the sock dems are now shitting themselves. They're going, fuck this, and they try to run. He kills as many of them as he can. Some of them get out to like the middle of Russia.
It's a different
Around, I think they call
circumstance because
themselves.
it's after a civil
Hold
war.
on. I think this is before the Civil War. They call themselves like the Kamucha People's Republic out there, something like that, out in the far like the east. And they meet up with the Far Eastern whites, and they eventually join with them. Anyways, before that, they just flee. So that's 3 purges in 1917, right? The officers go, I don't know, guys. We should be allowing these soldiers to like just make things up and then do them when we're at war with Germany. So we had most of them shot. So then the officers revolt, understandably, because most of them are getting shot. He goes, damn, those officers are revolting. Let's kill the king and his family now. And he shoots them.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
now
based.
we are 5 purges deep, and we haven't even started the Civil War. And then he was like, those Cossack guys, they kind of suck. So he killed a whole bunch of them, right? And then the Civil War starts, and he goes, man, I really hate the Cossacks. So he killed a whole bunch of them too. No reason. Cossacks didn't even revolt, just killed them. Anyway, they're dead. Like 33% of Kazakhstan died. Like, that says enough by itself. And then he started killing peasants after that because they owned more land than the other peasants, so they became kulaks. So
Yeah,
kill them too.
the landowning peasants.
Kill them too.
Yeah, because
Right?
they
And then
wouldn't
you know
compromise
what?
over like negotiations or grain
You
or
know what?
anything. So
He won. He didn't even try to negotiate with most of the kulaks, like the southern kulaks. He just killed them. He drowned them up and killed them, and then gave their land to the collective farmer.
Yeah, I don't think
King
the
Nabil,
fascist movement was
wait,
revolutionary
hold on,
enough.
hold on. King Nabil wanted to bring up the new economic policy. Do you know how long the new economic policy lasted? How long was
Until
that
Stalin
compromise?
took over, if I remember
No,
correctly.
it went
No, it
before
didn't.
him.
Nope. It went
It
under
did not
Lenin's.
last long.
Nope, it didn't. Yeah, there was no compromise there.
It was like a brief. It was like a brief little
2
thing.
years, maybe a year.
Yeah, it was like a year or two.
Yeah, there was no compromise under Lenin. Come on, dude.
and then
fair
Lenin
enough.
won.
Yeah,
He won in
Lenin
the
killed
end.
all his opposition. To be fair, I like you, Debo.
He
but
killed.
Lenin
He
That
killed.
could be he was able to kill his opposition.
He
But that
killed
was after.
everybody.
But this was after
the
like
anarchists,
some
like
brutal
most of
civil
them, in my
war.
opinion, deserve it. But yeah,
No, it
even
wasn't. This
before
was
the
before a brutal civil
Well,
war.
yeah, after he took
Like,
over and
what?
and
What
and they
happened? What
caused a
happened to
huge
Kerensky's
civil war.
government? You know,
this is
his
pre-civil war
friends,
stuff. This is
Kerensky's
when they
government.
coup. This is when they
Yeah,
couped
they
again.
overthrow the king and Kerensky's in power, and Lenin's like, I should kill that Kerensky guy. Now
Yeah,
Kerensky
so
gets out of the city in time, but he kills everybody else in Kerensky's
yeah,
government.
so Debo, the king had to abdicate, and then there's the February Revolution, which is Kerensky and his buddies, and then the
Yeah.
Bolsheviks came with the October
Well, it's
Revolution.
Kerensky and Trotsky. Trotsky had the loyalty of the Baltic Fleet sailors, right? The fucking Marines. So when the February rebellion kicked off, all the Marines went to him, except for the Marines that had Krill, Prince Krill. And then Prince Krill flew a red flag over his house and put like a red armband on. He was like, "I'm a communist too." And then they shot his family.
Oh God.
Yeah. And then Krill fled, understandably, you know. I don't know what he was thinking. I'm going to be real with you. I don't know what Krill was thinking when he told all of his men to put like red armbands on and fly this like the red banner and be like, "We're communists too." I fucking clueless. I can't tell you.
Proof all you need. Proof all you need is like a minority percent of the vote.
Yeah, all right. I mean,
like-
yeah, I'll give you that. I'll grant you yeah, Lenin and Stalin were, yeah, they weren't
Oh,
that.
how about Mao? How about Mao? Right?
Oh God,
Mao.
Oh
But these
god,
are all
Mao
figures after
starts
the civil,
off-
like during and
stop,
after,
let's
like
starts
a civil
off-
war, revolution,
starts
and
off
civil
starts
war.
off as this unimportant minor little political commissar in the center
exactly
of
like
Hubei
Stalin.
province.
Exactly like
And
Stalin.
then like nobody knows who Mao is, and then like the KMT goes, "I'm going to kill all of the communists in only one city, just in one city, Shanghai. That's it." And then they killed all the communists in Shanghai. So all the communists everywhere else went, "Oh fuck, let's revolt." So they revolted, and then Mao gets this bright idea, right? He goes, "Okay, the KMT is going to literally kill all of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk away, all the way to the other side of the fucking country. We're not going to fight any battles. We're just going to walk."
A lot
And
of
like
people
killed
died.
everybody in his army doing that. Yeah, most of them died. And then when he got there, people were like, "Mao, you've led us to death. We're starving. We don't have any weapons. You've walked us across China and abandoned all of our friends. Now what?" So he killed everybody who disagreed with him immediately.
Anyway, I
And
gotta go,
then
bro.
see ya.
Alright,
And then he
man.
wins the
Good
Civil
talking,
War
man.
and he kills more people. You know? Yeah, all I'm going to say, purging people seems to work.
Well, it works, but you can't always like purge.
I mean, every revolution is based on like purging people. To be
Yeah,
fair,
no,
like,
it
that's why you
is,
win a
but like
revolution.
you can't always. There aren't always the conditions for a purge. Like for example,
I-
Spring, he purged a bunch of people, and then he got purged himself.
Mussolini,
Like
that's because Robespierre didn't purge enough people. Robespierre was too delicate in his purge. That's not a critique. I'm just saying that like that's just the
you're
historical
also
fact of
like
it.
you just like sometimes you can't just purge everyone. You gotta like work with
Well,
people till you attain
okay.
power.
I think
No, you don't.
okay, so not to interrupt either of you guys, but yeah, I've just been reading a little bit, so that's why I've been pretty quiet. But yeah, to give my input on revolution and seizing power, yeah, I don't think to Seamus's point, I don't think fascism was revolutionary enough. I think that was its big reason why it had to make all
Yeah.
the concessions it
Fascism
did, right?
Fascism didn't have a purge.
Yeah, because it
Didn't.
didn't have a revolution, which is the problem, right? So the
Well,
problem
it had a short little one. The Squadristi took over most of the country just before the March on
Yeah,
Rome, and then
but-
like Mussolini,
but, like,
that's where the
yeah.
cucking started. Mussolini, like, you know, he
They didn't have
bent,
a full on
and he
like
let the king
actual.
stay.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean, though. Okay,
I
you know
just
what I mean.
He
You know what I'm
find it
He
a
had
saying.
little weird that he was
300,000
saying-
armed men. He had 300,000 armed men. He did nothing
I
with.
do find it a little
Yeah,
strange that you
exactly.
say
So that's my
Stalin was
point.
a
That's my point.
bloodthirsty
That's my point. They
tyrant,
should
and now
have.
you're saying that Mussolini wasn't
Okay,
bloodthirsty enough.
okay.
Seems a little
Stalin killed random people. And that's the difference. In Stalin's purges were all just like random people who had nothing to do with anything that he would invent charges for. He was a schizophrenic, paranoid piece of shit. He killed people at
I
random
don't
and
think it was
starved other
random.
people.
I think a lot of them.
It
Just,
was.
like,
It was
people who
completely
were against
random.
him, who
No,
were
like the
against
first
him,
couple of purges, were his old enemies. The second purge, like the third purge, was like his friends who he thought might betray
We're gonna
him.
betray him. It was one of his buddies. It was led by one of his buddies. I forget his name, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, and then the fourth purges were just random military officers who he accused of being Trotskyites. And then it was, I'm going to purge people because they're right wingers who weren't. Like he killed Tukhachevsky, the Red Napoleon, who had nothing to do with anything politics at all. None. Kill him.
Because I think there was like evidence he was associated with the Nazis or some shit, which I think
No.
might have been forged or whatever.
It was they literally the actual record of Tukhachevsky's admission of guilt that was collected by the NKVD is covered in his blood. It is soaked in blood, and they still
Sure,
have it
but
in the archives in
that
Russia.
allowed
It
him
is
to seize
soaked in
power,
blood.
and I mean, you were saying that
Well, no,
Mussolini
he was
was
already in power. He didn't
But it's-
need to kill those people. He
well,
didn't
it
because he
helped him
wasn't.
establish his like more power. Like it allowed him to become
He
more like a
didn't.
dictator. Like he wasn't
He
like
didn't have to purge them. None of those people opposed him. None of those people wanted him to compromise. None of them. Most of them had no influence in politics. Most of them had no part in politics. Like Tukhachevsky had no part in politics at all. And they still killed him. And when Hitler invaded, he refused to believe that Hitler invaded. So he shot his NKVD chief. Like what the fuck's you can't claim that this man was sane.
Wait, which one did he shoot? The one that like
There was like 3 in a row. The first one was like Hitler's gonna invade, so he shot him. And then the second one was like Hitler's gonna invade, so he shot him.
I mean, from what I remember, he shot one. Yeah, because and then one he shot because he like killed too many people. That like I
The
guess-
claim was that Tukhachevsky was a Trotskyist sympathizer, and it was a part of a military plot to overthrow Stalin. They got that claim after beating Tukhachevsky into such a state that he didn't know where he was or what he was doing. They brought him into court. They went, admit. And Tukhachevsky stood up, stumbled, fell flat on his face, and asked to go home. And then the judges declared him guilty, and they shot him in the back of the head the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Gravy Chef asked in the chat there, or made a comment. It had really nothing to do with, and then they shot a couple of other guys with him,
Just seems like
who were
you're-
clueless to this.
All right,
Yeah,
but I mean,
it wasn't just a tangent. I was just,
yeah,
yeah.
I know,
Hold on, I'll
but,
grab you a
it
source.
seems like you're saying okay,
Yeah.
these Mussolini and Hitler or whatever. I don't know if you say the same for Hitler.
I
but
didn't say
Mussolini-
Hitler, but Hitler
Okay.
did. This is the only time I'm going to say Hitler did the right thing, and that's when he purged the other wing of the Nazi Party. Right, from a purely sensible perspective, he was intelligent for killing the opposition. The opposition were probably better people than Hitler, and they definitely wanted more radical things than Hitler, economically and socially. Rome, for example, but they had to go. So he
Yeah, I
killed
mean
them.
that's how politics works.
It is.
Yeah.
It was a sensible. It's an example of a sensible purge, right? Because it made sense. There was a reason for that purge. There wasn't a reason for killing Tukhachevsky at all.
I mean, maybe he thought there was a reason. Like, it seems like you're being a little
I mean,
arbitrary.
I
saying
think
this is
Seamus was saying he was
reasonable.
paranoid was the reasoning.
No,
I
but
mean,
it seems like
Yeah,
you're saying
he was
that
a
some
paranoid
purges are reasonable and
schizophrenic.
others aren't, but you're basically being very arbitrary about what isn't reasonable, what isn't.
I'm-
Like, a purge is a purge. Like, killing people is killing people. Like, if you're purging, like, I don't think there's much of a difference between like what Stalin did versus what Lenin. They're both purge people. They both secure their own
No,
power base.
what I said at the very beginning is that there was different reasons for the purges, right? That's the important part. The reasoning for the purge is the most important part. Okay.
I mean, you talk about Robespierre. He killed a lot of people. I think at least some.
He
of them were
did,
probably
and he killed a lot of
innocent.
people sensibly. There probably were some. No purge is, perfect, right? No purge gets away with killing absolutely nobody who,
was innocent.
didn't deserve to die,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The innocents always get mixed up in it, but it's like
Yeah.
the per capita number of innocents per people who were actually good plotters. That is important. Robespierre killed like at most 40,000 people. And it wasn't him. It was mostly like the sans-culottes, just killing rich
Yeah,
people.
killing people. Yeah.
Like he had good reason too, because these rich people were part of the Vendée who were revolting. So like there was sensibility in his purge. It wasn't like he was just killing random people off the street. He did have enemies, and they did exist. And they had revolted, and he had proof of this, right? And he showed the proof every time they beheaded them. He was Robespierre. The difference between Stalin and Robespierre is that Robespierre was an incorruptible man, and everybody agrees on that fact. Even the people who overthrew him, Paul Barras, Blodvaniers, Pierre-Joseph Cambon, even Napoleon admitted that yes, Robespierre was an incorruptible man. Nothing Robespierre did was for personal, gratification or his own power. He did it in honest.
He was doing what he thought it
Pursuit
was
of
best. He was doing what he thought
exactly.
was best.
He was elected to the position. He thought he was carrying out the mandate, and he was. it's where the famous quotation "and so the revolution eats its own" comes from, right? Because Robespierre was the embodiment of the revolution, and then they killed him. You know?
pretty
And
much.
then Napoleon
pretty
took
much.
over.
Yeah, and then Napoleon took
Napoleon
over,
was a
and
Jacobin at
everybody
first, anyway.
and everybody, like, of course he was. Everybody lamented the fact that Robespierre was gone. The people who hated Robespierre the most lamented, like Paul Barras, who was one of his most fierce critics. I have the double regret, I should say the double remorse, of having overthrown Robespierre on the 9th of Thermidor and raised Bonaparte on the 13th of Vendemiaire. Furios of Cambon. We did not realize that in killing Robespierre, we would kill the Republic. These two men were his most fierce critics. These are the people who sent him to the guillotine. They regretted it deeply.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like,
Alphonse de Lamontagne.
Debo, this is
Alphonse
why
de
when I,
Lamontagne. He was the last word of the revolution, but none of us could read it.
Debo, do you remember a
Yeah.
month ago? I think it was a month ago when I said I liked the Jacobins, and people like
Yeah.
freaked out when I said that. This is pretty much why. This is pretty much why I said I like the Jacobins.
Fair enough.
I love
mean,
the Jacobins. Here's a quote from Napoleon Bonaparte on the matter. Robespierre was by no means the worst character of the figure of the revolution. He was a fanatic, but he was incorruptible. He was incapable of robbing or causing the deaths of other from personal enmity or the desire of enriching himself. He was an enthusiast, one who believed he was really doing right. And he died not worth a sou. That is like an old French coin.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know too much, but from what I know, I
The
just know
thing
he
is
like,
that
killed a lot of people.
he
Like,
did. For that era's standard, of course. For the modern day,
Yeah.
he killed fuck all. Like 40,000 people, please, right? Come on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
but,
obviously compared
but
to
like,
Stalin,
but like,
Stalin killed like
yeah,
a
but
lot
like,
more people. But
People
yeah, he killed
I,
millions.
I just
But
think
like
it seems a
back
little
then,
saying like, oh,
back then
Stalin.
that was a lot of people, right? But like the important thing is that there really was a conspiracy to kill Robespierre. It came
happened.
true. It did happen, right? Like there was Robespierre was loved and hated by the same people. It's a strange duality of existence, right?
Okay.
But
I
like
mean, I can say the same about Stalin. I mean, like there was probably plots to kill
no,
Stalin to replace him. Like, but
there
you're
were very
saying,
few.
right,
That
I'm
there
sure.
were
Like,
like none of them were carried out by the people who he killed though.
how do you know?
The random Jewish doctors did not plot to kill Stalin, but
That was
Stalin
still
killed
based.
them.
That was still based though.
Tukavensky did not plot to kill Stalin, but Stalin
Well,
killed him.
supposedly he plotted with the Nazis to like give them territory. Supposedly.
Stalin was best friends with Hitler. What?
I
No,
wouldn't say best friends.
there was no claim that Tukavensky.
They
Yes,
respected each other. I wouldn't call them
They
they
best
had
friends. They
personal
respected each
correspondence.
other.
Stalin locked himself in his room for 2 weeks after Hitler invaded and refused to talk to people. Stalin refused to believe that Hitler was going to invade him, despite the fact that not only his own spies but other spies were telling him that he was going to be invaded. A German sergeant from the Wehrmacht he defected, yeah, across the border and informed Stalin through one of the telephone posts at a local Red Army station that Germany was going to invade the next day. Stalin had him shot and returned to the Germans.
Yeah. Also, by the way, there was also like German. What was it? It was one of those spy planes was shot down over Ukraine, I believe. And
Yep.
they had like they were burning like pictures of Soviet formations and Soviet military bases, and they basically under interrogation they were like, yeah, we
We're
were
going
just
to
trying to go
invade.
to Poland. Yeah, we're about to go. They said we were just trying to go to Poland. We got lost, and it's like, well, why are you actually here? And they're like, well, yeah, we're about to invade. And then the minister, I forgot what it was, the NKVD brought it to Stalin, was like, yo, by the way, the Germans are about to invade. And he was like, no, they're not. And then, and also in Pravda,
He sent a letter.
in
Hold on, right
Pravda,
just before you go to that. Due to that incident, he sent a letter to Hitler asking why Hitler was amassing so many men on the border with Russia, right? And Hitler responded
trolling us, bro?
because they had a
I
personal
mean, in early
correspondence.
1941, Stalin gave a speech to graduates of the Red Army, which he
Mhm.
predicted that a war was approaching, and the Red Army would break the myth of the Weimar's invincibility, and preparation
Oh,
for the
that's
war.
just that's pandering. He's pandering to the army.
And preparations for
Like
the
the
war
personal
were underway in the
correspondence.
Soviet Union when the attacks came.
No, they weren't because Stalin literally told his men not to shoot back. He said, "Do whatever
So
you
they knew
do.
us.
Do not fight the Germans. Just keep
Stalin joined
withdrawn."
many streams of intelligence warning him that a German invasion is in the offings. They could not agree on the dates. Stalin knew that the Weimar was massing on his borders, but could not ascertain their intentions.
Yeah,
Furthermore,
so
Stalin.
I'm gonna to that notion, right? He sent a letter to Hitler going, "Why are you massing all these troops on the border with me?" Right? And Hitler responded in their personal correspondence that quote, the intent is to avoid the Allied bombings of our country by putting our troops in training on the border with the Soviet Union. And Stalin believed that. He believed that Hitler was just putting 1.2
He thought
million
that,
Wehrmacht
from
soldiers
my understanding,
on
he
the
thought
border.
this because Hitler usually
Where do you
tried
get these
and then
personal correspondences, by the way? Like, I'm there's not any question.
Are you familiar with
Like,
Indy Neindell? Indy
I'm
Neindell?
not. But
No,
if
he
I
did a
just
great World War II documentary series, and he
cool,
So
cool.
references
Stalin
it.
observed the pattern in Hitler's behavior. All of Germany's previous expansions had
Because I
come
just like
after
to get
the
my hands on
Fuhrer
this, you know.
first made a
Yeah,
final
yeah.
outrageous demand
So
for
one of
concessions.
his videos on the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, he covers all of like the evidence that Stalin had been given that an invasion was coming, and then he openly rejected, right? Including
Yeah,
the personal correspondence
like I
between
think
Hitler
he
and
knew the
Stalin.
invasion was coming. He just didn't know the date, and he thought that the Soviet Union was ready for the war, but obviously it wasn't.
Well, three things
That's
directly
like
contradict that fact. One, when the invasion happened, he ordered his troops not to fire at the Germans. Okay, that's very important. Second of all, he locked himself in his room and refused to come out for 2 weeks afterwards. Okay, at the beginning of the invasion.
here on
Three,
June
he openly
19th.
tried to give up. Hold on. Three, at the beginning, he openly tried to give up his Baltic possessions, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Polish possessions that he had won at the beginning of World War II to Germany to try and appease them, but Hitler would not respond to him. Okay. Stalin did not think there was. He may have had some vague idea that there might be a war with Germany, but he did not think Hitler would actually betray him. They had an actual pact. The two of them were supposedly close. I mean, SS soldiers were in Russia when the invasion started at a fucking dinner. Right?
Yeah, like
like
I said, I think he knew the war was coming. He just didn't expect it because he didn't expect them.
no,
to,
I don't think he I think he was told so much the war was coming that he made himself believe that it might happen, but I don't think he ever really bought his own belief of that.
I mean,
Like
on June
he
19th, the party boss of Ukraine, Nikita Khrushchev, held meeting with Stalin at the Kremlin. Khrushchev said, "I really must go. War will break out at any moment, and it might find me here in Moscow or on the road." Stalin responded, "Yes, you are right." A few days later, on June 22nd, Stalin, under incessant urging from Zhukov, allowed the Red Army units on the border to come up to baseline combat readiness, but emphasized that tasked our forces to refrain from any kind of proactive action.
Yeah, they weren't supposed to provoke. And then when the fighting started, he ordered them not to fire. A lot of his aides deeply believed war was coming. In fact, all of them thought war was coming. They all believed the intelligence that was been given to them, right? That war was imminent with Germany and everything. So yeah. Hitler wasn't tricked into attacking the USSR. Hold on. Hitler wasn't tricked into attacking the USSR. He wanted to. He explained that in Mein Kampf. He wanted to expand it east.
Okay, you took the words out of my mouth.
It was a long-term goal of the Nazis to enact labor.
It was even pre-Nazi. Like
It
German.
is the Volkish,
nationalists have been talking about this for like
all the way
since
back in
the
like
1890s.
1880s.
Yeah, 1880s, 1890s. It was like actually a Swedish poli-sci guy who came up with the idea of Lebensraum, and then he met with Rudolf Hess and was like, "Bro, here's a good idea." And then
And Alfred Rosenberg, and then how Himmler was in the Bolshevik Landwehr, and before that he was in the Bolshevik Iron Division, right? The Freikorps that went into the Baltics. Right? Those were the proto Nazis because they thought that they could expand into the Baltics and make it like a united German state.
Yeah, Lebensraum was always like a key part of like at the very earliest you could say from Mein Kampf on. I'd say really earlier, honestly. It was always a part of Germanic nationalism, but it became a key part of like
even Marx.
National Socialism.
Even Marx promoted Lebensraum. So
funny. He talked about pushing.
So no, there was no tricking into war. There was no tricking into the war.
But I don't think
he always wanted a war.
I haven't seen anything that says, "Oh yeah, he ordered them not to fire." I mean, yeah, he didn't order. There was like some generals who ordered them not to fire. I don't know if he like directly ordered them not to fire.
Indy Neidell in his video, it's gonna be a bitch for me to find, but like if you watch the World War II series, he does start it from like the beginning of Barbarossa.
What is his sources though? Like I feel like
his sources. Well, he's
what are his sources?
He's not making them up. He's a University of Stockholm fucking history guy, okay? And
Okay, he's good
he does
then.
cite everything. Yeah, he is good, and he cites
Yeah.
every single piece of work that goes into the production. It's a very high skill production piece. Okay,
Okay.
Better than David Irving. I'll tell you that.
Hitler did like Stalin. So did Goebbels. Goebbels
Yeah,
really liked
Goebbels
Stalin.
loved Stalin. Goebbels loved Stalin.
Goebbels wanted an alliance with Stalin, and that was like Rome's idea too. He hated German nationalism. Rome did. Rome wanted the Red Brown Alliance, right, in order to face Western capitalism. Hitler that did not like that, and that's why that's part of the reason why Long Knives happened, right? Is because figures like Goebbels and Rome's and like the remains of the Strasser faction in the Nazi Party were like going for the so-called Second Revolution,
There was
right?
even division. There was even division within the Strasserites. There was even division.
There
Within the
was
yeah, like
because you
if
had
yeah.
In the Berlin section under Steins, right, who was like very Germanic nationalist and wanted Lebensraum, but like Steins had been exiled from the Nazis for like fighting with the SS because he wanted the SA
even
to.
between the Strasser brothers, there was like some significant disagreement over stuff.
Yeah,
like even between Gregor and Otto. Like but
Yeah.
anyway, that's just not important. That's not really important in discussion. I just felt like pointing that out. That was like pretty
No,
significant.
there definitely was a split there, but like the major split was between the guys who wanted the Second Revolution.
Yeah.
And the guys who were supporting Hitler, right? And
One of
Goebbels
the real
flipped on them. That's why they got Germany doesn't. Germany Hitler had way too much faith in the army. Way
For
too
good
much
reason.
faith.
The army was very good.
Well, no, it was above average, but like
It was very.
Hitler was under the
I
belief
don't.
it wasn't very good. It was outperformed by Czechs. It was outperformed by French soldiers. It was outperformed by
How was
just
it
about every
outperformed?
major army.
I mean, they
The
conquered
issue,
France and Czech. How is it
do you
outperforming
know
any?
why? Because they just went around the army. And
Yeah.
then the French didn't want to fight a war. The French citizens didn't want to fight a war. The
but at the
army
same time,
fought
like
very
sure,
well.
that is true. But like at the end of the day, going around them, you outsmarted them. I mean, the French
Yeah, no,
army.
they did.
Like, I'm gonna be honest.
That's why I said they were above average. They had a much better tactical pros, right? They had the
And
like unit
operation-wise, they were
autonomy and whatnot.
superior.
I wouldn't say
Yeah, and also
operation wise.
the French not
Tactically,
wanting to
they were
fight. Yes, the
superior.
French didn't want to fight. The French didn't. Yeah, I'd agree. The
But
French didn't want to fight. But again,
where the
that's
French
still a
did
knock on
fight.
their army.
So what I'm talking about is pure capability. I'm not talking like tactical planning. The Germans won mostly due to local ingenuity, right? They had tactical independence for their officers, which was a big reason why they performed so well. Most armies in Europe were top down, really strict World War I style, right, where every order was put up and down a bureaucratic chain of bullshit, right? So that's why when Germans gave their individual like division and brigade officers a lot of tactical like autonomy, that's why they performed so well. But in actual combat effectiveness, the Wehrmacht was above average at best. It failed against the Poles, right? When there was actual battles between Wehrmacht and Polish troops, the Poles would come out on top most times, right? Same with the Czechs. The one battle they had with the Czechs kicked their ass despite being outnumbered something like 10-1, right? With the French, where there was actual battles with the French, they couldn't even get through French armor, right? I think it was the Char A or something like Char C or something like that.
The Char B1.
Yeah, that's it. The Biz, right? B1 Biz. They literally couldn't penetrate it with any of the guns or captured guns they got from the French. So they just went around them, right? And like Char Biz 1s would take out like a dozen Panzer 2s and 3s by themselves. And then they would be like their track would be blown out, so they would just have to like abandon the fucking tank. But like in actual combat effectiveness, the Wehrmacht wasn't very good. It was still very dependent on horse for travel and fodder.
That's true.
It was still very,
on horse, but they were still very effective, like in terms of actual like capability, in terms of like battles, in terms of winning.
They were above average. They were above average.
I'd
But they
say
weren't
like
great.
I'd say while you do bring up some good points, I'd
They
say you
also-
are still kind of underselling them a little bit.
Yeah, they also.
I don't think I am. They performed. They didn't invent maneuver warfare. The British did. JFC Fuller did. In fact, Hitler even accredited him with its invention when he
They were
visited.
like the first to like use it to like to the degree.
In 1936, Hitler had like a line of Panzers roll past, Panzer ones and Panzer II, early ones, I think, roll past him and JFC Fuller, Colonel JFC Fuller from Britain, who had been visiting, right? And he said, "Look, Fuller, here are your children." As the Panzers rolled past, because Fuller is the one who invented what would become known as Blitzkrieg. Although Guderian did do a lot of work in expanding it, the theory of war was good. The Germans had a very excellent theory of war. I'm not disputing that. I'm talking about combat efficiency, right? They had the advantage in tactical ingenuity due to their autonomy for local leaders, right? Brigade and division leaders. And they had a very good tactic, although they only had one. When the Blitzkrieg didn't work, they were fucked. That's what happened in Russia. There was too much to Blitzkrieg. They couldn't
Sure.
do it.
I
Right?
mean,
There's
yeah,
too much
but
land.
yeah, but like against any other force, if any other like country sustained the losses.
Well, no. In France, the Blitzkrieg only worked because the fucking British ran.
Sounds like
If
a cope, but okay.
it isn't a cope, it's a reality of history. The British army just ran. That's why Dunkirk happened. And the Germans
to be fair,
failed
they
to
did have good
capitalize on
reason to because they
Dunkirk.
got outflanked. They had good reason to because they got outflanked.
Well, the issue was is that the outflanking maneuver was entirely proposed on the
Also,
idea that the British would run.
was the one who maneuver on the operational, like created the concept like maneuver on the operational level.
Who?
The guy during the Prussian-French War.
Oh, you mean Moltke?
Yeah,
Like-
Moltke.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Blitzkrieg.
Well, Blitzkrieg is just like
Operational. Well, that comes from Fuller, right? Which was the core reasoning of that is what the German army was built around. The Wehrmacht was built around the concept of Blitzkrieg from 1934 onwards because Guderian adopted it and he really liked it. And Hitler really liked Guderian, so Hitler just did whatever Guderian would tell him to do. Which is it's strange because they blame all of the terrible tactical decisions in Russia on Hitler when it was Guderian telling Hitler to do those things.
Yeah.
But no, the German army was above average at best in combat effectiveness.
I'd say it is above average. I'd say its tactics are very good.
I think it's very good.
Oh, I'm not talking about tactics. I'm talking about combat effectiveness.
No. I'm not talking about. I'm saying I'd say it's above average in its tactic, and in addition, its tactics were very good. In addition,
Yeah, they had that advantage. They did because everybody else was still stuck in World War One.
Sure. Hey, I mean, it worked pretty well, all things considered. They were able to.
Germany didn't have better tech. Their transmissions on their tanks were a joke and would break every 5 fucking seconds. Everything was over-engineered. Right?
Like through their tactics, they were able to achieve.
the problem with the Germans, they didn't standardize.
I was responding. Yeah, they didn't do that either. But I was responding to Mega Sorrel here. That Germany had better tech. Not really.
The problem is they didn't have like a standard. Like the thing with we see with the Western Allies is they had the Sherman. They standardized the Sherman. They always produced the Sherman. And with the Soviet Union, they always produced the T-34.
Well,
and they always
the
produced
tech,
the KV-1. They
the
standardized
tech wasn't good though. Like the tech was, I hate to say it again, but above average, right? Because they got really into over-engineering things. The German industry would over-engineer everything. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Mega Sorrel here, right? Like they over-engineered everything. Their tanks, they had good armor and they had a great gun. That's what they had, the 88 centimeter or the millimeter, right? The CWT. But that's a great gun. It was a really good fucking gun. But it's fucking useless when your transmission blows out. And then when you fix the transmission, oh fuck, you've slipped something in the engine and now you have to take the engine out. You put that back together and oh, look at that, the track's broken at the bracket because the metal's inferior quality because for some reason the plant didn't want to double smelt or use proper processes, so they just rushed it. Oh, you don't have a part for that because guess what, you have a Panzer IV-E, but that they're now producing the Panzer IV whatever the fuck.
But I think
so
on
they don't make your part
level,
anymore.
Germany was much superior to pretty much anyone else at that time.
And France had better tanks. So did the Czechs. In the early war, Czechs and French had way better tanks than the Germans did. The Czechs, the Germans used more Czech weapons in the invasion of France than they did German. The Czech tanks were the main component of a lot of units going into France. That's because the Czechs made exceptionally good weapons. And they were famous for that. They'd export their weapons around the world. And the French made good weapons. We had talked about the Char B1 Biz. But the light tanks, the cavalry tanks, the Char C1 was also pretty good. It's faster than a fucking Panzer III was. Had a better gun on it too. And it was more reliable. Wouldn't break down every 5 fucking seconds. But no, if you want to go point for point, the best equipment wise, it'd be America. Unfortunately, they already had mass-produced semi-automatic rifles, the M1 Garand. Their tanks were generally decent quality. Like the Sherman was famous, but like the Lee was the one that did most of the heavy lifting early on, and the Lee was
When you
pretty
said
good.
when you were talking about the Czech battle, you were talking about the Battle of whatever barracks,
Yeah,
and you think that's like I mean, from what I'm seeing, it's like 3 wounded, 6 to 18 killed. I mean, I don't think that's like a good example of like the fact that Czech was better than Germany.
it's the only example we have because the Czechs, the government folded on the Czech army.
Yeah.
The issue is that like the Battle of Krajinek's barracks, right? It was an
Yeah.
example of small unit against big unit, right? You had a German regiment, if I remember, 80 something. I don't remember the exacts, but 80 somethings fought Pavlik and his fucking overstrength machine gun company. The Germans had armor support and like actual artillery, and the Czechs had like a mortar. And still, over the course of 2 days, the Germans couldn't eject the Czechs from a haphazard position, despite having them 10-1.
I mean, I think it's one
And the
example.
Czech
I don't think
soldiers,
it's
the Czech soldiers, the Czech soldiers, the Czech soldiers hadn't even been in training for like 2 months.
I mean, it's a pretty minor battle. I don't think that you can make
Yeah,
it
it
like
doesn't matter
huge.
if it's a minor battle. It's a statement on efficiency, right? You had a proper mainline Wehrmacht infantry regiment get its teeth kicked in by an overstrength, untrained fucking machine gun company.
Yeah, 6 to 18 killed is teeth getting. I mean, I don't know.
It
I think you're
is
over. I
on a
think
local
you're.
battle. It absolutely is. The issue is that the Czechs weren't even all armed. They didn't all have rifles. And you know what? They didn't lose a single man, the Czechs, in the course of a full day of actual fighting, despite the Germans progressively getting more and more support, including armored companies, including artillery companies, right?
I don't know. I just think it's one. I don't think it's like you can make a huge
Yeah, here
statement
we go.
saying
The majority of Czech soldiers had only been there for 14 days, and they still beat the German army.
they didn't beat the German army. They lost the
They did.
battle.
They won. They won the
How did
battle.
they win? They
The
got.
Germans had to stop attacking, and then later on, the Czech troops surrendered once they
They
had learned of the
surrendered. That's
surrender
kind
of
of. That's.
Czechoslovakia. No, the battle had ended, and then they surrendered. They won the battle.
Yeah, after they ran out of ammunition.
No.
Here, Colonel, whatever, the battalion commander issued orders by phone to cease fire and the threat of court-martial. Initially, Pavlik ignored the order, but the German fire became intense as they poured the barracks with anti-tank cannon and mortar rounds. After a night of fierce fighting and low on ammunition, Pavlik ordered his men to cease fire.
Yeah, they weren't out of ammunition.
Well, I mean,
And they weren't disarmed until the next day after news had gotten in that there was a surrender. And then
okay. I think
most
you're
of
just
them would
taking
go
too
into
much
the
off
government army.
one like small battle, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, we can talk about
And that's an
something else.
opinion you can have.
Anyway, I don't know. I think on operation level, I think Germany had a very like operation. They were like some of the best. Like that's part of their success in like all these invasions of in Poland and France, even in the Soviet Union. Like before they just stretched too far. I don't think you can deny that.
What that
I mean, I don't
they
think
had
he
a good
is. I think he's
operational
saying
team?
that they're an above. I
Yeah.
think he said that they're an above average army with good
They are.
tactics. So he's not saying that they're bad. He's saying that they're above average with good tactics, which is
Oh yeah,
I
in
think he's
operation.
I think he's underselling. I mean, I think Seamus is making good points. I think he's underselling them a little bit. However, I definitely think that it's a reasonable view to have.
Yeah, I
I think
guess.
it's a reasonable view to have. I mean, I
Does
would
seem
say
he
that.
has his biases, but I guess we could
I
just.
mean, no, we don't. We all. I mean.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, no. I'd say it's an above average. I'd say it's an above average to good army with really good tactics.
I'd say
It's
it's a
pretty
pretty
much.
good army.
And
I
again,
think
I mean, and
Poland.
I'm not a military historian, so I'm in no real place
Well,
to
me neither.
to,
But from what
to,
I've read,
to
the
comment.
general consensus they were like they were a very effective fighting force that was held back by a lot of
Good tactics. Yeah,
yeah,
good tactics.
by a lot of like logistics and
Yep.
stuff like that.
The open war at the beginning of the war, the Wehrmacht was an above average with good tactics. By the end of the war, they were fucking awful, folding at every instance. The only
Well,
The
probably
saving
because
grace
they were suffering from like huge like manpower issues. Like the
by
officer corps was
1943 they were already folding. So
well, yeah.
To be
'cause they
fair,
couldn't anymore.
to be fair, like there are a couple things here, right? Number one, um, as you said earlier, which is this is their fault. This the Jesus Christ, I can't speak English. The style of warfare that they were trying to fight in Russia was not adapted for Russia. They were trying to do blitzkrieg in Russia, and as you correctly put out earlier, you can't blitzkrieg all of Russia. And eventually, they pretty much just ran out of steam. They ran out of resources. Russia got their manpower under them. Russia got their army under them. Germany, lost too many men in too many important battles, and it was kind of just inevitable that they would get pushed back just because they were going to get overwhelmed, right? So that's more of what happened. So it's a combination of their offensive strategy was ill-equipped to Russia, which caused them to lose, a lot of manpower.